The story begins with a huge meteorite crashing into the continent 100 years ago. It struck the ground with great force, leaving behind a huge explosion and destruction. A huge number of eggs flew out of the meteorite and scattered across the earth, from which terrible insect monsters immediately appeared. They immediately entered into a bloody war with humans, but humanity quickly began to lose because it was not ready for battle. Ordinary weapons could not kill the creatures. But thanks to the power of spiritual contracts, humanity clung to its last hopes for survival. In this world, women awaken in various spiritual forms, while men become spirit masters, and together they face the challenges of battle. Thanks to the joint efforts of the spirit masters and the spirits themselves, humanity managed to hold on to its last bastion of hope amid fierce battles. And 100 years later, at the Qingting Academy of Spiritual Martial Arts, the annual awakening ceremony was held. The girl placed her hand on the awakening stone, instantly transforming into a C-class Zamadeo. The registrar teacher barely reacted, as C-class talents were too commonplace for him. The girl was depressed. At that moment, a bright guy in yellow stood among the crowd, thinking about what talent he would receive. Then, a girl in a revealing outfit with a stunning figure confidently stepped onto the awakening platform, attracting everyone's attention. The moment she gently touched the awakening stone, it seemed as if the world around her froze, and everyone held their breath. In the next instant, a dazzling beam of light shot up into the sky. The light was so bright that it seemed as if the blessed radiance itself had appeared. Immediately, a blood-red spear appeared in the air, exuding a powerful and menacing aura. The teacher conducting the awakening cried out excitedly, "It's an S-class weapon, the Silver Spear of Blood Jade. Its special feature is that its ghostly spirit is indestructible, a rarity among rarities." The hall erupted in cheers, and everyone was shocked. Only a couple of people had been able to awaken this rank before. But the guys in the crowd asked them to be quiet. After all, this beauty has a boyfriend. But when she returned from the crystal, Xiaomei approached the guy in yellow with a cold expression on her face and announced that they had to break up. He was no longer worthy of her. They were no longer on the same level, so he should not bother her anymore. The crowd immediately began to mock him, their words full of contempt. They said he was not worthy of such an exceptional girl as Xiaomei. He frowned, feeling a pang of bitterness, because it was disrespectful to his feelings. The girl was only focused on showing off her new talent, but she didn't understand that he was no longer the spineless minion who had once groveled before her. He was about to reveal his true potential. Before that, he had gone out of his way to please her, even sacrificing his dignity. But in return, he received only her unrelenting contempt and ridicule. Now he understood that, in this era of spiritual contracts, true power was the only way to earn respect and recognition. His classmates continued to mock him, using all sorts of cruel comparisons, calling him a loser and a pheasant who could never be worthy of Xiaomei, the noble phoenix. These sycophants, who worshipped only power, weren't they afraid that he might awaken a talent higher than S-class and crush their arrogance? Hearing his words, Xiaomei couldn't help but laugh. She asked mockingly if he really thought he was worthy of awakening something higher than S-class. Soon, the teacher conducting the awakening finally called his name. As a migrant, his heart was full of anticipation. He wondered what level of talent he would be able to awaken. He slowly placed his hand on the awakening stone, feeling a mixture of tension and anticipation, not knowing what would happen next. To everyone's surprise, the awakening stone did not react at all. Not even a glimmer of light appeared, and the hall was immediately filled with contemptuous laughter. Seeing this, Xiaomei smirked triumphantly and said that she had always known he was a nobody. Hoping to awaken something higher than S-class? Just a dream. To the guy's surprise, a dazzling golden light suddenly burst out of the awakening stone through the laughter, spiraling into the sky like a golden whirlwind and enveloping the Qingting Academy in a bright glow. Everyone was stunned by the sight, and they wondered what it was. S-rank or SS? A beam of energy struck the sky above the city with force. When the light gradually faded, the awakening stone clearly showed his talent level. SSS class spiritual talent, divine rebirth. The result caused a general commotion. No one could believe their eyes. Xiaomei stood stunned, Something like this happens once in 100 years. The guys in the hall gasped, their faces full of shock and disbelief. They couldn't believe it. How could he awaken an SSS-class talent? After all, a fighter of that rank could easily turn the tide of war. The girls, on the other hand, quickly changed their attitude, becoming indescribably excited. One begged Brother Hanjiang to choose her. Even though her talent was only B-class, she was obedient and intelligent, and would definitely not let him down. Another asked Brother Hanjiang to look her way, promising to cosplay different characters for him every day. He rejected all their requests for a contract without hesitation, knowing that these ordinary girls would only slow down his development. Then he eagerly opened his attribute panel, his eyes full of anticipation. He had a divine awakening. At that moment, Xiao Mei, with a slight blush on her face, nervously approached him from behind. With a tremor in her voice, she said she was wrong before and offered to make up. Hello. As soon as he turned his head to look at her, her face was full of nervousness and anticipation. However, to his surprise, her detailed information suddenly appeared before his eyes. This must be the ability of divine vision. Seeing that he was silent, Xiao Mei assumed that he was still unhappy, and quickly added that, at most, she would allow a kiss or something intimate. Returning to reality, he categorically rejected her offer without hesitation. She reluctantly took a step back, resentfully suggesting that they do it once a day. But the hero did not respond to her requests. The female students around them, hearing Xiao Mei's pitiful plea, immediately began to mock her. They shouted at her to stop pretending to be innocent. First she dumped him, and now she's pretending to be cute and unapproachable. How presumptuous. Their words were full of ridicule, even in other contexts, such as when they said that another queen of their campus was beautiful, but she was nothing more than a useless vase. The mockery continued. They said that anyone who chose her would not even pass the lowest level of the exam. Hearing these hurtful words, Xiao Wei could no longer hold back her tears, feeling extremely insulted and heartbroken. Xiao Wei could no longer bear the ridicule and mockery of the crowd. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she ran out of the crowd, her steps hurried and uncertain. In her panic, she suddenly ran straight into his arms, her body trembling slightly, as if she had finally found a safe haven. He quickly reached out to support her, and quietly asked if she was okay and if he had hurt her. At that moment, information about Xiao Wei appeared before his eyes, stating that her contract spirit was none other than Citra Fusi, one of the 10 ancient divine artifacts. However, her talent was only rated as E-level. He could awaken her. Xiao Wei's face flushed with embarrassment. Her eyes were full of remorse, and she continued to apologize quietly, as if she thought she was to blame for everything. He gently stroked her head, soothing her with a quiet voice, telling her not to worry because he didn't blame her. Looking into her eyes, he sincerely said that he hoped Xiao Wei would walk this path with him and become his exclusive contract spirit. Before Xiao Wei could even respond, the girls around her began to shout that it was a stupid choice. Xiao Wei's face was already contorted with anger, and she shouted indignantly, how could he choose an E-level trash instead of her? Suddenly, the director appeared on stage, waved his hand with a stern expression, and declared that he must strongly object to Han Zhang. The director continued that he understood the impulsiveness of youth, but Han Zhang carried the future of the nation on his shoulders and was entrusted with the task of reviving humanity. Hearing the director's words, Xiao Wei lowered her head, and tears flowed down her face again. Choking back her tears, she said that the director was right. Her talent was too weak, unworthy of a contract with him. At that moment, a middle-aged man burst onto the field with several subordinates. It was Xiao Hu, the defender of Deep Blue City. He glanced sharply at him and said coldly that he must be Han Zhan and that he had put on quite a show today. Seeing Xiao Hu's appearance, Xiao Mei immediately rushed to him excitedly. Finding her protector, she sweetly called him Godfather. Xiao Hu looked at him coldly, his voice full of menace. He had heard that he had publicly rejected his goddaughter. Did he think he was too brave? He continued to threaten that, whether he believed it or not, with just one word from him, no one in Deep Blue City would dare to sign a contract with him. He advised him to be smart, apologize immediately, and sign a contract with his goddaughter. Otherwise, he would make sure that he would not survive here. The guy gave Xiao Hu a cold look and replied that she was unworthy. The contempt in his tone stunned everyone around him. Xiao Hu's face flushed with rage at these words, his eyes blazing with anger, and he raised his hand, seemingly ready to teach him a lesson. The director quickly stepped between Xiao Hu and him, grabbing the boy by the arm. Gigi didn't even flinch. The principal asked Xiao Hu's deputy to remain calm. After all, he was an awakened SS level, and he had already reported this to his superiors. Xiao Hu sneered contemptuously. He said that the guy had to sign a contract with that useless spirit Xiao Yue. Otherwise, there was nothing to discuss. Without hesitation, he said okay. He was ready to sign a contract with Xiao Yue, and no one could stop him today. He gently but firmly took Xiao Yue's hand and led her to the contract hall while everyone around them watched in amazement. Xiao Yue raised her head, tears streaming down her face, and said breathlessly that she was sorry, Han Zhan. It was all her fault. All these problems. He gently took both her hands and smiled, saying that she didn't need to apologize because, to him, she was the one worth giving everything for. In the contract hall, when the ritual officially began, golden chains stretched out from all sides, binding Xiao Yue and him tightly together. During the contract ritual, he activated his divine summoning skill without hesitation. Instantly, his eyes shone with a dazzling golden light. With the activation of the divine summoning, Xiao Yue's body began to radiate intense heat. Her appearance gradually changed and turned into a purple light. He managed to see the sunlight, which had now turned into an ancient artifact, the Citrufuzi, filled with an aura of eternal elegance. Xiao Yue transformed from an E-level spirit into an SSS-level spirit, her presence filling the entire hall with awe. Xiao Yue's eyes glistened with tears, her face full of disbelief as she tried to comprehend the magnitude of her transformation. Overwhelmed with emotion, Xiao Yue threw herself into his arms, tears streaming down her face. Gasping for breath, she thanked Han Zhang for helping her find her strength. The moment he successfully signed the contract with Xiao Yue, 3 abilities immediately appeared before his eyes: Breakthrough, Mind Purification, and Soaring Dragon. Xiao Yue's abilities were truly powerful and versatile. In her spiritual form, she demonstrated flawless strength without any weaknesses. Every aspect of her powers was impossible to ignore. With Xiao Yue by his side, his confidence soared. He was sure that in tomorrow's spiritual contract exam they would shine, impressing everyone and becoming the center of attention. Meanwhile, on the other side, at the awakening ceremony, Xiao Mei clung to Zhao Hu, pouting her lips and playfully shaking his hand. She complained to her godfather that jerk Han Zhan had disgraced her today. He smiled calmly and told her not to worry. He was now with a girl of Ye rank. Zhao Hu's expression turned cold as he smiled. He would make sure that Han Zhan couldn't take a single step in Deep Blue City. Xiao Mei playfully thanked her godfather. Zhao Hu looked at her with a meaningful smile on his lips and replied that a simple thank you was not enough. Blushing, Xiao Mei snuggled up to Zhao Hu and coquettishly said that he was so bad. She suggested going to their usual place tonight and really having fun this time. In just one night, the entire Deep Blue City was abuzz with negative news about him, which spread wildly across the internet. Some outraged citizens even created a petition demanding that he be expelled from Deep Blue City and exiled to the dark, dreary lower district. Meanwhile, in a luxurious room at a 5-star hotel, Zhao Hu sat comfortably on the sofa, holding his phone and watching the news. A smug smile appeared on his face as he thought to himself that this move had worked even better than he had expected. Xiao Mei, with admiration and dependence in her eyes, sweetly sang that her godfather was truly amazing. Zhao Hu raised an eyebrow with a teasing look and asked in what way he was amazing. Zhao Hu's smile turned icy, for this was only the beginning. Soon, during the evaluation stage, Gigi would learn the full extent of his wrath. Finally, they finished. At that moment, Xiao Yue and he entered the academy's dining hall. The students around them began whispering, glancing in their direction. They discussed the choice of such a talentless girl with a beautiful face. Hearing these sarcastic remarks, Xiao Yue's face flushed slightly, and a shadow of guilt flashed in her eyes. She apologized. He smiled slightly and gently ruffled her hair, telling her to stop apologizing so much. After all, she was the beauty queen of the school. She needed to believe in herself. He smiled as he pushed a piece of bread toward her and quietly told her to eat breakfast first. pass the upcoming spiritual contract test, and not let him down. Xiao Yue felt a rush of warmth from his encouragement. A sparkle flashed in her eyes. She nodded softly and promised firmly that she would do her best. Just as they were talking, a provocative voice suddenly rang out behind them, asking if he was Han Zhan. He turned his head and saw a guy approaching with Xiao Mai. The guy smirked, because the protagonist didn't look like an SSS-ranked fighter. He lifted his chin and proudly announced that he was Yao Mei's spiritual contractor, Wang Lamao. His tone was full of pride and superiority. Hearing that name, he couldn't help but laugh and almost spit out his breakfast. After all, his name meant Green Hat. Seeing him giggle, Wang Lamao's face flushed with anger. His veins bulged, and he demanded to know what he was laughing at. Xiao Mei snorted coldly, took Wang Lamao by the hand, and pretending not to care, told him to forget about it and not waste his time on him. He was just a loser. The evaluation of the spiritual contractors was about to begin. Lamao and Gigi exchanged glances, then the bastards left. The scene shifted to the academy's large hall, where a teacher was walking. The ceremony was about to begin. The teacher on stage looked around and said sternly that each level of this test had different difficulty settings. The rules were simple. It was enough to pass at least one level. The teacher raised his voice, announcing that the next group of test subjects, Xiao Mei and Wang Lamao, should come forward. At that moment, Xiao Mei and Wang Lamao stood on the stage with confidence, their heads held high, as if victory was already in their hands. When the exam gate slowly opened, the test area was filled with a tense atmosphere, and everyone held their breath in anticipation of the upcoming test. When the gate was fully open, a green insect slowly crawled out. It was enormous in size and radiated a dangerous aura that sent a chill down everyone's spine. Wang Lamao nervously grabbed Xiao Mei's shoulder and reminded her in an insistent tone that she needed to focus, because the test had begun and they needed to take it seriously. As soon as Wang Lamao finished speaking, Xiao Mei's body turned into a shining spear, exuding a fierce aura of combat readiness, directed straight ahead. When the black snake lunged at them, Wang Lamao gripped the spear tightly and struck the monster. With a shout, he lunged forward, aiming the tip of the spear directly at the snake's weak spot with unstoppable force. The sharp tip of the spear pierced the black snake's body with a dull clang. It turned out that the snake's skin was much stronger than expected, and piercing it was much more difficult than one could imagine. Wang Lamao's expression changed slightly. He clearly did not want to accept defeat. He gritted his teeth, gripped the spear tighter, and prepared to strike even harder. The moment he gathered his strength again, a bright golden aura of heavenly energy burst forth from the spear, radiating a power that seemed capable of shaking the heavens. He threw the spear forward with all his might, and the golden heavenly energy gushed forth, piercing the black snake through and through. The audience gasped in amazement at the sight, then burst into cheers. So this was the power of an S-class spiritual contractor. It was incredible. The huge screen showed Wang Lamao's devastating blow over and over again, the moment when the spear pierced the black snake. High-ranking officials gathered in the command center, holding their breath as they watched the screen. One of them remarked that piercing it with a single strike was not bad. Wei Qing, head of the First Division, laughed contemptuously, saying dismissively, "Is that S-class talent? They are far from the real level." The elder, who did not like Wei Qing's remarks, hit him on the head, scolding him and asking how many times he had told him not to talk nonsense. Lin Jingsuen, head of the Second Division, adjusted his glasses and calmly analyzed that, considering the S-class, this blow should be 20% stronger. He added that he suspected that the spirit weapon's dissolute lifestyle was to blame for the spiritual energy leak. Hearing Lin Jinshuang's comment, Xiao Hu's expression instantly became awkward, and he clearly found it difficult to respond to this remark. Meanwhile, in the combat testing area, Wang Lumao and Xiao Mei successfully passed the test at the 7th level of difficulty, breaking the previous record, earning them thunderous applause and cheers from the audience. Now it was his turn with Xiao Yue, and the crowd filled with whispers and smirks. People wondered what a guy with an E-class spiritual weapon would look like. It would probably be pure panic. The teacher raised his hand and officially announced that Han Zhan and Xiao Yue would be next. All eyes instantly turned to them, eagerly awaiting the results of their test. When the test gate slowly opened, the boy was shocked, as they were greeted by a sight of 10 first-rank black snakes. Xiao Yue and he exchanged stunned glances, wondering what was going on. Was this really a level 1 test? Someone in the crowd sneered maliciously. It seemed that the organizers had deliberately targeted him. Serves him right for choosing a trashy E-class spiritual weapon. In response to the crowd's confusion, the teacher calmly explained that the difficulty of the test was adjusted according to the level of talent. What they didn't know was that before the test began, Xiao Hu had already secretly spoken with the teacher. Now the teacher was smirking inwardly, thinking that the guy had messed with the wrong people. However, the main character remained calm, showing neither anger nor dissatisfaction, as if everything was still going according to his plan. Suddenly, at that moment, Xiao Yue turned into Guqin Fusi. He gently embraced her, and when his fingers lightly touched the strings, the melody spread out like ripples on water. A huge energy blade rushed forward like a storm, sweeping away everything in its path with irresistible force. The 10 black snakes didn't even have time to react before the energy blade pierced them, decapitating all 10 in an instant. Their heads fell to the ground simultaneously, creating a shocking sight. Everyone at the scene was stunned, unable to believe their eyes. People exclaimed that this was a real one-hit kill. They couldn't believe it. Was this really an E-class spiritual weapon? If it was trash, then they weren't even worth the garbage. In the command center, Wei Qing, watching what was happening, was so shocked that he slammed his hand on the table, exclaiming that it had taken him a whole 30 seconds to do it. Lin Jingshan adjusted his glasses and calmly remarked that, although his strength was indeed impressive, he must point out that the difficulty had been increased. Zhao Hu, looking a little embarrassed, forced himself to remain calm and explained. It was a temporary adjustment to the difficulty. They believed that Han Zhang's wasteful use of his talent was setting a negative example for others, so they raised the standards. Wei Qing unhesitatingly defended Zhao Hu, saying that he considered it quite fair. In their day, they had faced the same level of difficulty. The elder frowned. He wanted to see how far this guy's limits would go, and he continued the exam. When the test moved on to the second stage, 20 black snakes suddenly burst into the arena, doubling their previous number, which made the situation even more dangerous. He remained completely unperturbed, standing calmly in place. His fingers gently touched the strings of the Fusi Guqin, as if he were simply playing a simple melody. The melody spread from the Guqin straight to the monsters. Each note was filled with deadly intent. With one smooth movement, all 20 black snakes were instantly destroyed again, leaving them no chance to resist. He stopped playing, his eyes full of confidence, and casually remarked, "Is this what you call increased difficulty?" The audience began to whisper, some exclaiming that this guy's arrogance knew no bounds. Wasn't he afraid to openly challenge the organizers? Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the team center was tense. Wei Qing slammed his fist on the table and firmly declared that this guy was theirs. They absolutely had to take him. The head of the third district, Yi Qi, quickly objected that the people in the first district were all daredevils. It was not worth sending a newcomer to his district. It would be better to send him to the third district. Wei Qing, enraged by Yi Qi's attempt to poach the talent, shouted, "How dare he steal his recruit? Is he asking for a beating?" Unexpectedly, the head of the fourth district, Shenze, intervened with a smile. The two of them were focused on the main battlefields and fortress assaults. These are not the best conditions for a novice. Why not let him join the fourth district and start with researching relics? Wei Qing and Yi Qi almost in unison shouted at him to get lost and stop causing trouble here. Seeing that the argument was getting out of hand, the elder finally lost his patience, banging on the table and sternly ordering them to stop. The elder pulled himself together and turned to Lin Jinshuang, who adjusted his glasses and calmly said that the exam was completely pointless. Although the black snakes had strong defenses, Han Zhang's Guqin music was the perfect counter to them. No matter how many of them there were, it was useless. The elder nodded slightly, agreeing with the proposal. Let's release the strongest test. Hearing the decision of the elder and Lin Jinshuang, Xiao Hu's face broke into a smug grin, and he thought maliciously about how long Gigi would be able to maintain his arrogance this time. Soon, the instructor received instructions to adjust the test, raised his head, and solemnly announced to everyone that the difficulty of the exam had been raised to the highest standard. When the third-level test began, 10 massive second-rank armored lizards and 10 agile second-rank thunderbirds appeared at the same time, causing the tension in the arena to rise sharply. The combination of these beasts made the audience hold their breath in eager anticipation of Han Zhang's response. Wasn't this too difficult? Unperturbed by his formidable enemies, he calmly assessed the situation, and a confident smile appeared on his lips. The other guy did the same and said that this level might be barely enough to warm up his skills. The armored lizards moved forward like a moving steel wall, steadily approaching with a terrifying appearance. In an instant, the Thunderbirds launched their attack, spewing dazzling blue lightning bolts from their beaks, which turned into electric chains and rushed towards him, as if intending to engulf him completely. However, just as the lightning was about to strike, he waved his arms, causing Gucci Fusi to fly into the air. He touched the strings, and a powerful note sounded, turning the sound waves into countless shining divine warriors, which, like a storm, descended upon the armored lizards and thunderbirds with stunning force, leaving everyone in awe. The divine weapons formed a coordinated attack in the air, striking the vital points of the armored lizards. The tremendous force of the blow caused the beasts to retreat, their thick defenses crumbling under the relentless pressure of the music. However, the Thunderbirds responded with dazzling speed, unleashing their electric discharges at full power. They smashed his divine weapons to pieces, the fragments scattering amid sparkling arcs of lightning. Seeing that his divine weapons were broken, he jumped into the electric web without hesitation. His body moved at tremendous speed, the discharges crackling around him but causing him no harm. He silently shouted to himself that it was time for his decisive move to break through. His mind was focused to the limit, and his fighting spirit burned in his chest. The spectators were in shock. The Gucci Fu in his hands trembled, releasing an even more powerful surge of spiritual energy. He landed gracefully on the ground, his eyes burning as he faced the armored lizards and thunderbirds once again. It was as if everything that had just happened was merely a warm-up, and the fire of battle continued to burn in his gaze. He activated his breakthrough. The melody of the Guqin became sharper and faster, cutting through the air like a blade and aiming at the very heart of the enemy formation. In the next second, countless sound waves turned into blades of light, raining down like a meteor shower on the armored lizards and thunderbirds. The razor-sharp blades instantly pierced every enemy, causing them to collapse with cries of agony, while silence reigned on the battlefield. When the examiner announced the results, the crowd erupted in applause, and only Wang Lumao's face turned ashen. He clenched his teeth, muttering through clenched jaws. Shock was evident on the students' faces, and someone couldn't help but exclaim, "Are there really people stronger than these beasts?" At the command center, 2 regional leaders stared at the screen with eyes full of disbelief, shouting almost in unison, "This guy is unreal." They turned their gaze to Xiao Yue, now suspecting her true abilities, and thinking to themselves, "There's no way she's just an E-class spirit." The elder quickly called his assistant, Ah Fu. His expression was tense, as he clearly wanted to confirm Xiao Yue's true rank without delay. He instructed Ah Fu to use his spirit identification ability to thoroughly check Xiao Yue's level. Ah Fu shook his head, looking a little disappointed. He had already tried, but he couldn't determine her level, just like with Lin Zhen. The elder was shocked. If Xiao Yue's situation was similar to Lin Jun's, then it meant that her potential had been unlocked thanks to her contract with Han Zhang. Ah Fu nodded in agreement with the elder's assumption. To find out the truth, perhaps they should arrange a meeting between them, allowing them to discuss everything face to face. The elder's eyes lit up as if he had remembered something, and he quickly asked, "What was the name of the E-class talent that Lin Jun awakened?" And the secretary remembered. It was Kazan Shenun. At the same time, he confidently told the instructor that he wanted to move on to the 4th level of difficulty. His eyes were full of determination. And so the instructor wished him luck and told him to take care of himself. When the test began, countless monsters poured in from all sides, instantly turning the scene into a tense and intense battle. He glanced at the approaching monsters, thinking to himself, "This is the perfect opportunity," especially to test his limits and see how deep his potential was. As the difficulty level continued to rise, he fought without hesitation, finally overcoming the 9th level trial, leaving everyone around him in complete amazement. After this grueling battle, he finally felt his body exhausted, standing there, breathing heavily, but the fire of determination still burning in his eyes. The instructor, seeing his exhaustion, kindly advised him to stop, as continuing could seriously harm his body. However, he shook his head firmly and declared that he wanted to challenge the last level, the 10th difficulty, as he had nothing to lose. The surrounding students were instantly thrown into confusion, whispering to each other, "Is he crazy? No one has ever passed this level." Even Wei Qing, who was the best in his time, only managed to pass the 9th level. Wei Qing set the best record in the last century, and now his gaze was fixed firmly on Han Zhang, clearly intending to recruit this talent. Surprisingly, even the usually reserved Lin Jingshen suddenly released the aura of his spiritual contract to attract Han Zhang to his faction. The instructor saw his determination to continue the trial, and although his eyes were full of concern, he knew that the decision had been made and did not stop him again, only sighing inwardly. Without hesitation, Gigi sat down cross-legged, placing Guqin Fusi steadily on his knees, took a deep breath, and calmly asked to be allowed to rest a little and restore his spiritual energy before continuing. Then he cleared his mind of all distracting thoughts. His fingers lightly touched the strings, and he effortlessly played a soothing melody. To the melody of the soothing music, his spiritual energy and Xiaoyue's energy were restored at an astonishing speed, leaving the audience in awe. Seeing this scene, the students were stunned, and someone exclaimed, "What kind of artifact is this? Not only does it have powerful offensive and supportive abilities, but it can even heal. It's practically universal. It's just game-breaking." At the command center, the two regional leaders exchanged glances, seemingly coming to a silent agreement. They decided to settle this with a duel. At that moment, the head of the 5th region, Lu Jingchun, cleared his throat, interrupting their conversation. He asked if they were really going to send such a talented individual, capable of absorbing spiritual energy and healing wounds, straight to the front lines. Wei Qing turned around with a dissatisfied snort at Lu Jingchun's words. "Old Lu, do you want to put in your 2 cents too?" Lu Jingchun smiled slightly and said that if he could come to the 5th region, the mortality rate of spiritual contractors on the battlefield could be reduced by as much as 30%. The other two leaders almost unanimously objected. Obviously, they were not willing to miss this chance to recruit Han Zhang. Seeing the leaders arguing endlessly, the elder could no longer hold back. He frowned and said in a stern tone, "Enough." Everyone fell silent when they saw the elder speaking. The elder cleared his throat and said, "The 8 regions of Great Xia have their own responsibilities and have made tremendous contributions. The 1st region excels in long-range combat, the 2nd is skilled in strategic planning, the 3rd focuses on expansion and the development of new territories, and the 4th is responsible for exploring unknown, mysterious regions. The 5th region focuses on saving lives and providing medical care. The 6th region guards critical narrow passages. The 7th carries out overseas missions, and the 8th works quietly behind the scenes, supporting all of the Great Xia's battles." The elder said that he had actually considered creating a 9th region, but there had not yet been a suitable opportunity. This revelation stunned the regional leaders, and they exchanged puzzled glances. They immediately realized that the reason for this was the new genius student. With the start of the 10th level test, a 3rd level Zerg appeared, the Crimson Flame Beast, radiating suffocating pressure. Its massive body and blazing flames seemed ready to consume everything in its path. It looked like a walking volcano. The Crimson Flame Beast roared deafeningly, accompanied by waves of scorching flames, causing the temperature to rise sharply and making it seem as if the air itself was burning. When the spectators saw that Gigi was standing motionless, they couldn't help but wonder if he had gone mad, not even trying to dodge. At that moment, the guy smiled slightly and mentally asked Xiaoyue if she was ready. Her voice responded firmly. No matter what the guy decided to do, she would support him unconditionally. A wave of bold ambition filled his chest, and he said loudly that his goal here was not just survival. It was to fight and perform miracles. The crimson fiery beast unleashed a barrage of fireballs at him, but with a quick, light movement, he dodged them all, like a shadow dancing in the flames. It was a very powerful explosion. He was really lucky to dodge it. Immediately afterwards, he gently placed his fingers on the strings of the Fusi Guqin, and even the air around him seemed to vibrate in anticipation of a fierce battle. The sound of Fusi's Guqin soared upward, echoing across the sky as he sang softly. He summoned the drop of the righteous spirit, 1,000 miles of joyful wind. With resonant notes from all sides, a powerful hurricane rushed in, as if the forces of the universe had united for his cause. Amidst the howling wind, one of the female students' skirts flew up, causing a mixture of frightened screams and laughter from the crowd. With a loud cry, he commanded the monster to die. The tornado burst forward like a dragon, heading straight for the crimson flame beast, instantly engulfing its blazing flames and robbing it of its fiery power. The tornado, engulfed in flames, exploded with a deafening roar, turning the body of the crimson flaming beast to ash, which scattered in the air. Seeing this scene, everyone present was completely stunned. It was hard to imagine anyone breaking this record. Wang Leimiao's face darkened with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, that guy stole all the glory." Xiao Mei's expression was even gloomier, full of bitterness, as she thought. All her efforts last night had been in vain, now turned into complete ridicule. At that moment he felt a sharp pain, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The backlash from forcibly using a high-level musical score caused a wave of pain throughout his body. But he stood firm, unyielding. Suddenly his surroundings changed rapidly, and everything was enveloped in a blinding white light. Someone was approaching him. The guy asked, "Who is this in front of him?" A man with black-rimmed glasses and a calm expression emerged from the void with a slight smile. He congratulated him on passing the test and welcomed him to the second assessment space. The man asked the guy a few questions. For example, who did he think would ultimately win this war? The Zerg or humanity? He answered without hesitation. The Zerg may prevail in battle, but the will and determination of humanity will never be easily broken. Lin Jingxian seemed intrigued by his answer, showing a hint of curiosity. Then he asked, what was he fighting for? With a wave of emotion, Gigi replied that he was fighting so that the Zerg would not destroy our homeland, so that they would not sow chaos on our land. He wanted people to live here in peace again, for the flag of Dacia to fly high over every inch of his native land, restoring it to its former glory. As soon as he finished speaking, an elderly man slowly approached from afar. He was clapping his hands. Despite his gray hair, he looked spry and stood with a strong posture. With eyes like a hawk, he nodded to him and asked if he was ready to learn from him. Lin Jingxian quickly intervened and introduced him. This is Master Li Shatong, one of the most formidable figures in all of Dacia. Hearing the name Li Shatong, he froze for a moment. That name was legendary throughout Dacia. He was not only a great fighter. 100 years ago, Dacia was going through its darkest times, when 3 Zerg emperors joined forces to invade the entire continent. The catastrophe destroyed countless homes, and the people's hopes were gradually swallowed up by the encroaching darkness. At the critical moment, when Dacia was on the verge of collapse, Li Shatong stepped forward, single-handedly confronting the 3 Zerg emperors. With pure strength and determination, he crushed the overwhelming force of evil, ultimately turning the tide in Dacia's favor by killing all 3 Zerg emperors. His name was forever carved on Dacia's monument. Gigi couldn't contain his excitement and replied without hesitation, "It would be my honor." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately bowed to Li Shatong, performing the traditional bow of a disciple with the utmost respect. Li Shatong laughed heartily, helping him up and patting him firmly on the shoulder. He liked this guy much more than anyone else. A look of approval flashed in his eyes, as if he already had even greater hopes for him. With that, Li Shatong took out an antique-looking ring and handed it to him. He had created it using the bones of a 9th-rank Zerg emperor. It contained terrifying energy and aura. Even bones possessed such mighty power. This ring not only intimidates low-ranking Zerg, but also provokes aggression in stronger Zerg. so it is not necessary to wear it all the time. Without hesitation, he put on the ring, because he couldn't not wear such a gift from his master. Seeing his straightforward action, Li Shatong laughed. Li Shatong then cast a teasing glance at Lin Jingxian standing behind him. After all, there were cowards who would not dare to wear the ring. Lin Jingxian blushed slightly, sweat appeared on his forehead, and he was clearly embarrassed that his indecision had been exposed. Li Shatong enthusiastically suggested that everyone go to a grand dinner in honor of your outstanding achievements. They happily headed to the most famous hot pot restaurant in Deep Blue City. The place was filled with light and warmth, as if all the liveliness and spirit of the city had gathered here. Li Shatong offered to introduce the young man to his elders. As he spoke, he pointed to each of the men standing around them, introducing these formidable figures who had left their mark on the battlefield. Lin Jingxian continued, introducing each one in turn, and Qiu, head of the third combat zone. Next to him was the fourth, Shen Jishi, responsible for the fourth combat zone. And finally, your fifth elder brother, Lu Jingcheng, leader of the fifth combat zone. He quickly stood up and bowed respectfully to his older brothers, greeting them. The older brothers all smiled warmly and waved their hands, saying that everyone here was family. There was no need for such formalities. Due to their busy schedules on missions, the others were unable to attend. The sixth is currently at the border, and the seventh is engaged in overseas assignments. As for the eighth older brother, he has always been an enigmatic figure, rarely seen and difficult to track down. As soon as the guy finished speaking, a dark figure suddenly appeared behind the protagonist, shrouded in fog that hid his face. The mysterious eighth older brother handed him a note, his expression inscrutable. Let him call in case of danger, but only once. And then he disappeared into the fog again, his presence dissolving as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving behind an aura of intrigue. Watching the eighth appear and disappear in an instant, Gigi couldn't help but think that he was truly an enigma. At that moment, Lin Jingxian picked up a heavy box and threw it to him with a smile. Inside were gifts prepared by his older brothers. With deep gratitude, he bowed to his older brothers, saying, "Thank you all for your generous gifts." Suddenly, a sharp and sarcastic female voice came from behind the door. She was filled with discontent. Hearing this familiar voice, Xia Yuwei instantly realized that it was her aunt. The woman looked angrily at the girl and said that all this time they had been feeding and providing for her, and now she was flying solo and enjoying life without them. Xia Yuwei was about to explain herself when the woman suddenly raised her hand, intending to hit her hard. The guy immediately reached out to stop her, his voice cold as he asked, "What does she think she's doing?" The woman glared at him angrily, gritted her teeth and said, "Get lost." She realized that this was the very guy who had taken Xiao Yuwei away. He had been raising her all this time. Now she wanted her reward. The usually gentle Xia Yuwei could no longer hold back, and she suddenly interrupted the woman angrily, shouting, "Enough!" The woman's face turned pale with rage at Xia Yuwei's reaction, and she roared, yelling at her for daring to shout at her like that. Wasn't she untouchable? She gritted her teeth and threatened her with Uncle Niu Niu, a big shot in the 4th District. Just one phone call, and her career would be ruined. As soon as the threat left the woman's lips, Shen Jitsi, the leader of the 4th District, looked at her in bewilderment and asked who she was talking about. Before Shen Jitsi could finish his sentence, the woman impatiently interrupted him. The woman turned her gaze to Li Shatong, pointing at him arrogantly and asking, "He's Han Zhang's grandfather, right?" She continued confidently. She said that if they wanted to take Yue away, they would have to do it properly. Transfer the gold, house, and cars to her name. Li Shatong, completely irritated by her rude demands, slammed his hand on the table and shouted at everyone, "What are you standing there for? That pig already called him an old geezer. Start calling." As soon as he said that, the leaders of the 3 districts quickly took out their phones, looking miserable. Another guy from the center was also calmly drinking his tea. The woman sneered contemptuously, saying that their calls would not change anything because she had connections. As soon as she finished speaking with a smug expression on her face, her phone suddenly rang. As soon as she answered the call, an angry voice on the other end shouted, "Does this fool want to ruin us all? Now they are breaking ties. The woman's smug smile instantly froze, and her face turned pale. Li Shengtong smiled sarcastically and said that there was no one above him. Soon her phone rang again, and the voice on the other end of the line yelled at Fu that if she wanted to dig her own grave, go ahead. But don't drag him down with her. One last piece of advice. Stay away from Hanjiang and Xia Yue. The woman's hands trembled, and the phone fell to the floor. Her face turned as white as a sheet, and she panicked. What the hell was going on? As she stood there, confused, the waiter behind her approached and sternly asked her not to make a scene, or she would be escorted out. Suddenly, she plopped down on the floor and wailed loudly that the spiritual counterparts were simply mocking her. They were trying to drive her to her death. Li Shengtong, clearly annoyed, waved his hand and shouted, "Enough." The next moment, the woman vanished into thin air. Everyone stared at the empty space where she had been standing, not knowing where she had teleported to. Xia Yue's face was full of guilt as she lowered her head, her voice trembling slightly as she apologized to Li Shengtong, saying that it was all her fault. Li Shengtong showed no reproach. He said that she could consider them her family, and that she no longer needed to return. She could just stay here with Hanjiang. Xia Yue's eyes filled with tears of gratitude, and she nodded repeatedly, warmly thanking her teacher. He smiled slightly when he saw the moved expression on Xia Yue's face and gently told her that she didn't need to be so formal, because they were all family here, and told her to eat more. Li Shengtong, carefully dipping the meat into the hot pot, cheerfully explained the unique features of the 9-square hot pot to them. He said that this hot pot had its own rules, with the central section intended for foods that should be eaten immediately. He continued that the 4 large sections are for stewing dishes, while the 4 smaller sections are ideal for simmering food. After listening to Li Shengtong's explanation, he couldn't help but joke, asking the teacher how he saw him, as a quick dish, a stew, or a simmered dish. Li said that no one can say for sure. Everyone has their own path in life, and no one's vision can determine another person's future. Li Shengtong's words made him think deeply, causing him to reflect on the direction and choices of his future. Just as he was deep in thought, Li Shengtong suddenly froze, his face reflecting confusion. He stared at the now empty squares of the hogo, suddenly embarrassed, and asked where the beef had gone. Xia Yue blushed slightly, guiltily pushing her bowl toward the protagonist. Outwardly, he calmly covered her bowl with his hand to smooth over the awkwardness. He quickly changed the subject by asking why their spiritual companions were not with them. Lin Jingxian interjected with a teasing smile, asking if they were still sleeping together. As soon as he said this, Sagi Yue's face turned bright red, and she was too embarrassed to even look up. Seeing Xia Yue's charming reaction, Lin Jingxian said that this was how they could obtain abilities. He also added that spiritual partners have 2 combat forms, object form and human form. Their daughters-in-law currently maintain their human forms, remaining at their posts and fighting monsters. It turns out that a spirit master and his spirit partner can not only fight side by side, but also act independently in different places. At that moment, Xia Yue, blushing deeply, whispered that this synchronized state could only be achieved after they shared a room. At this moment, Lin Jingxian couldn't help but ask Xia Yue if she was really just an E-level spirit partner. He confirmed that Xia Yue was originally only a first-level spiritual partner, but the guy had awakened her to SSS level. Hearing his words, his older brother's expressions froze. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. It was unbelievable that he could actually develop a spiritual partner from E-level to SSS level. People on the outside think that he chooses his spiritual partners at random. But he can see when a spiritual partner has divine traits. Li Shengtong gave him a serious warning. His talent is truly extraordinary, and he must not talk about it. Li Shengtong then turned to Lin Jingxian and told him firmly that when he returned, he must keep the information about Hanjiang and Xia Yue confidential. After dinner with the hogo, the elder brothers all stood up and respectfully bid farewell to Li Shengtong. Each of them had an expression of reverence and gratitude on their faces as they returned to their districts that same night to resume their duties of guarding the posts. Some time passed and night fell, with only Xia Yue and Gigi remaining with Li Shengtong. Li Shengtong smiled warmly, patted him on the shoulder, and said he would take them to a new home so they could begin to feel at home in Deep Blue City. The young man was puzzled, quite surprised that Li Shetong actually owned property in Deep Blue City. Li Shetong paused for a moment, a hint of nostalgia appearing in his eyes as he quietly said that Deep Blue City was his wife's hometown. The young man cautiously asked about the lady, where she was now, and why she was not with him. He had a feeling that this question might touch on a sensitive memory for his teacher. Li Shetong suddenly stopped, his voice full of restrained pain and grief. She had died in battle defending Great Xia. Li Shetong laughed bitterly, because the world only saw him as the hero who had turned the tide and saved Great Xia, the one who had killed the 3 great insect emperors. But no one knew that she was the true hero of that battle. Without her, who would he be? Hearing about the grief, the boy sincerely apologized to his teacher, saying that he was sorry and should not have brought up a topic that caused him pain. There was no trace of reproach in Li Shetong's eyes. Instead, he looked at him kindly and sincerely said that he should treat Yue well. Han assured the teacher that he understood and thanked him for his guidance. He cautiously asked what the lady's name was, because as long as they remembered her, she would never be truly forgotten. A gentle smile appeared in the teacher's eyes, and he said softly that he was indeed different from others. Her name was Lin Mei. In that historic battle, he had managed to kill only 1 insect emperor, while she had single-handedly fought and defeated 2. If she were still alive, the honor of saving the Great Xia would belong to her, for she was a true hero. After saying these words, Li Shetong seemed to sink into his memories. He waved his hand, telling them to go rest, while he sat quietly on the lawn in front of the villa, gazing at the night sky, as if remembering the beautiful moments he once shared with his beloved wife while watching the moon. Xia Yue and he quietly approached Li Shetong, looking at the bright moon together. He said quietly that, although his wife was no longer with them, from now on they would accompany him to watch the moon, and together they would cherish her memory. Li Shetong slowly stood up, a warm smile spreading across his face as he looked at him, and said that he reminded him so much of his younger days. Li Shetong's tone suddenly became firm and powerful. He said that in order to truly protect those you love, you need overwhelming strength. With these words, he began to teach them his most skillful martial arts, his determination seemingly leading them to a higher level. Li Shetong shouted loudly, his fist striking the giant tree in front of him like lightning. The tree split with a loud crack. Li Shetong smiled slightly and said that this martial art was called the 8 Limits Fist. It contains 8 chains, each of which seals the limits of the human body. You have to overcome them. Suddenly, in just a moment, Han identified the key point and successfully unlocked the first chain. He asked his teacher if that was how it was done. Li Shetong's expression became completely shocked. He looked at him with disbelief, muttering how this was possible. At the time, it took Wei Qin 6 whole months to barely unlock the first chain. But Han had grasped the essence with just one glance. He calmly explained that perhaps he just had keen intuition, that he could feel the flow of power hidden deep within his body and determine the key point. A moment later, the old man delivered a powerful blow right at him, laughing heartily and saying that we would see if the guy could handle his 8 Limits Fist. The force of the blow was tremendous, throwing him several meters back. He staggered, feeling the energy boiling inside him, and struggled to withstand the stunning blow. He lay on the ground, clutching his chest and grimacing in pain, his face contorted with agony. But Li Shetong was delighted like a child, laughing heartily, and saying that there was nothing better than disciplining a brilliant student. Li Shetong laughed, wiping a tear from the corner of his eye, a hint of nostalgia and sentimentality flashing across his expression. He said quietly that it reminded him of the time when his master trained him in the same way, and now, having the opportunity to pass on this joy to him, he was truly indulging in memories. The next morning, he tidied up his clothes and arrived at Qingting Academy looking refreshed. It was graduation day, and the campus was filled with the joyful laughter of graduates anticipating new beginnings. As soon as Xia Yue saw his swollen face, her eyes filled with concern. She asked if it still hurt, if he was feeling better, and how the teacher could be so ruthless. Just then, Wang Greenhat strode over with his 2 henchmen and sneered, asking if this was Han Zhan, who now looked like a loser. Xia Yue looked puzzled by Wang Greenhat's mocking words. not understanding his insinuations. He gently patted her on the shoulder and quietly told her not to let these disgusting people get to her, because they were just jealous. When they entered the principal's office, they finally understood what was going on. The principal looked at them with a serious expression, because he wanted to discuss something important. The principal explained to them that, starting today, they would be assigned to the Deep Blue City Defenders organization and sent to the front lines. Chen Guangpu handed him the order and told him to hurry to the location, as it was an order from above. With his SSS-level talent, this assignment was a complete waste of his abilities. But Gigi calmly accepted the assignment, thinking that perhaps this was what his master had meant when he spoke of his own path. When they left the office, they saw Wang Greenhat and his henchmen standing at the door with smirks and mocking expressions. He mocked Han Zhang, saying that even if he was a genius and came first in the exams, he wasn't cool because he had crossed paths with the officials. Seeing Wang Greenhat's smug grin, a flame of anger flared up inside him. Wang Greenhat saw the fury in his eyes, but it only made him bolder. He teased him and boasted that after last night with Xiao Mei, his strength had skyrocketed. Wang Greenhat roared, waving his fist, around which purple spiritual energy gathered and rushed at him. The two forces collided in the air, exploding instantly with a deafening roar. A powerful shockwave rippled through the surrounding air. With a sharp crack, Wang Greenhat's bone broke. His face instantly paled, and he grabbed his broken arm in agony, completely unable to continue the attack. Seeing Van Grinchet in confusion, Han seized the opportunity, quickly gathering all his spiritual energy. His aura instantly intensified, his fist glowing brightly, ready to deliver the final blow. His fist mercilessly slammed into Van Grinchet's face like lightning, and the tremendous force threw him back, slamming him into the wall. Wang Greenhat's eyes darkened, his head drooped, and he lost consciousness, collapsing to the ground like a rag doll, completely defenseless. After giving Wang Greenhat a well-deserved beating, Gigi felt relieved, took Xia Yuwei by the hand, smiled calmly at her, and then they walked confidently away from the noisy scene. Chen Guangpu heard the noise outside and ran out of his office, shouting for someone to help, because Wang Greenhat needed to be taken to the medical center immediately. The main characters quickly arrived at the Defenders organization to register, noticing a man with his head down, standing with his nose buried in his phone. Without even looking up, he lazily told them to go to the counter, take a number, and wait in line without blocking the passage. When he heard that the heroes had come to join the team, surprise flashed in his eyes, and he finally raised his head to look at them. He raised his head with a smirk on his face and said that the procedure had been complicated for them. After all, they had to take care of the only SSS-ranked master in Dot. He quickly changed the subject, saying that their files had been entered into the system, and they had been assigned to Squad 0527, with Han Zhan appointed as the squad commander. In the Defenders organization, each city has a main squad responsible for leading and managing all other squads, which are divided by district numbers. Then, rummaging through the notebook in his hand, he impatiently told them that the office of Squad 0527 was located in the old warehouses area on the east side of the city. When they pushed open the door to the 0527 squad office, they were hit by a strong smell of alcohol, and the floor was littered with empty bottles which, seeing the mess in the room, he couldn't help but frown and ask if this dump was really the office of Unit 0527. A woman with an innocent face but a voluptuous figure held a glass of wine and narrowed her eyes at them curiously, asking who they were and what they were doing there. He said directly that he was the new captain of Unit 0527, Han Zhan. The woman's expression became even more surprised. She clearly did not expect such a young leader. At that moment, the drunk man lying on the bed opened his hazy eyes and looked at them, his gaze full of drunken haze. He asked mockingly if such a child really wanted to be their captain. What kind of joke was that? And told him to get lost and cool off somewhere else. Xia Yui's face reflected complete disgust upon hearing this, and he shook his head in disappointment, surprised that there was such a group of broken people in the Defenders organization. What was even more despicable was that the drunk man looked at Xia Yue lustfully, smiling coquettishly and offering her to become his spirit. Before he could finish his sentence, the main character hit him hard, throwing him into the corner with a dull thud. He landed heavily on scattered glass bottles, the shards digging deep into his skin, but he seemed completely oblivious to it. As if nothing had happened, he casually picked up a bottle from the floor and continued drinking, completely unperturbed. A woman named Hong Ying-hui gave him an annoyed look and told him to deal with the new captain, while she was going to her room to rest, and then left without saying another word. With that, Hong Ying-hui turned and entered the room, slamming the door loudly, clearly not interested in them. And Fan, with a wry smile, dusted off his clothes, noting that Squad 0527 was so broke that it couldn't even afford drinks. Gigi calmly replied that as long as he was here, this state of decline was only temporary. Fan walked over to an old laptop in the corner, skillfully typing on the keyboard, and, bringing up a list of Defender Squad ratings on the screen, helplessly showed it to him, telling him to look for himself. Their squad, 0527, was in last place among the Defender squads in Deep Blue City, and had been for quite some time. Fan sighed and continued that in 2 months, the end of the year would come, and the organization would carry out large-scale layoffs, and Squad 0527 would almost certainly be disbanded. He said that the lower district was a place of chaos, dirty and disorderly, where living conditions were simply terrible. He said bluntly that if he didn't want to end up dead in this place, he'd better give up now and leave while he still had the chance. He stared at the empty bottle at his feet, deep in thought. Zhao Hu had used every dirty trick in the book to push him into the lower district. Seeing his expression, Xia Yue gently tugged at his sleeve and whispered that this guy had lost all hope in life, that he was just a wreck, and that they should leave. He said in a calm but determined tone that running away from difficulties only makes them weaker, and facing them is the only way to survive and become stronger. Besides, even if he joined another squad, someone like Zhao Hu wouldn't let it go so easily. He continued that instead of running away, they should stand their ground here, turn Squad 0527 into the strongest team in Deep Blue City, and completely destroy Zhao Hu's plans. With these words, he resolutely pushed Hong Yingwei's door, ready to face any difficulties that lay ahead. She said she wasn't happy to see them and asked them to leave. But Gigi asked, "Is Ho Yingwei really going to sit here and wait for death? Or would it be better to call her Bai Shuang?" Hearing his words, cold sweat appeared on Bai Shuang's forehead, and he nervously asked what exactly he wanted and how he found out about it. He replied frankly that he was not there to threaten her, but simply wanted to invite her to join him on a mission. They couldn't rely on Yi Feng, and she definitely didn't want to end up in the lower district, did she? They would split the mission rewards equally, just this once, and he would see that he wasn't just talking big. Bai Shuang thought for a moment, weighing the situation, and thought to himself that since this guy was able to see through his disguise, she agreed. Having formed a partnership, he immediately instructed Bai Shuang to start collecting all available missions, leaving the choice of task to himself. Soon, Bai Shuang handed him a tablet with all the collected and organized mission details. Most of the missions on the tablet were low-paying and troublesome, and seemed as if they were not worth the effort. Without hesitation, he switched the mission interface to the highest-paying task available, exterminating the Zerg, which was much more difficult and offered a much higher reward than the others. When Bai Shuang saw the mission he had chosen, her face paled. She asked if he had lost his mind. Since the recommended team size for this mission was 6 to 8 people, and at least 2 squads were required to complete it. However, without a moment's hesitation, he pressed accept, because only such a difficult mission could help them turn the tide and quickly increase their points. Bai Shuang shook her head in annoyance, saying that he was completely crazy, and asking if he understood that a 10% penalty would be deducted for failure of the mission, which was a serious penalty. Without hesitation, he turned away, leaving behind a determined silhouette, and said not to worry, because even if something went wrong, he would take full responsibility. Bai Shuang sighed inwardly, feeling helpless and thinking to herself that since she was working with him, if this mission failed, she would have to kill the Han. Meanwhile, the news that he had taken on the mission quickly spread among the other teams, causing a real stir. The commander of another squad was shocked when he heard the news that the team had accepted it. They didn't even know who dared to do it. The leader wasted no time, immediately gathering his team members and ordering them to go to the sewer entrance to see who dared to take the mission for themselves. Soon, he arrived at the mission site with Bai Shuang and Xia Yue. Bai Shuang gave them a detailed overview of the surroundings and the main situation of the mission. Xia Yue and he exchanged glances, their eyes showing silent understanding and determination. Without hesitation, he grabbed Gu Qin Fuzi and disappeared from view, leaving them with instructions to stay there and wait for him, promising to return soon. Bai Shuang was completely stunned by what he saw, exclaiming inwardly that these were all second-rank Zergs, which even a standard team would have difficulty dealing with, and he was going to fight them alone? Soon, a strong tremor shook the ground nearby. Bai Shuang's heart sank. Something had obviously gone wrong. She rushed over, her face full of tension, worried that something had gone wrong and that it was too late for her to kill him. However, when Bai Shuang finally reached the scene, she was completely numb, her eyes widening in disbelief. She could not have imagined that Han Zhan would single-handedly destroy all the second-level Zerg without getting a scratch. Han Zhan calmly told her to hurry up and collect the valuable materials from these Zerg. They could fetch a good price, and it would be a shame to let such a good thing go to waste. Before he could finish speaking, Han Zhan handed Bai Shuang the body of the missing guard, and without saying another word, turned to leave. An hour later, another team arrived at the scene after receiving the news. When they saw the corpses and the clear picture of what had happened, they were able to see the body of the missing guard that Bai Shuang was holding. The two Zerg had apparently been killed with a single clean blow. The team leader couldn't calm his troubled mind, muttering with a complex expression on his face about what kind of monster could have carried out this mission so flawlessly. As soon as they completed the mission, Zhao Hu, who was far away, received the news and his expression changed instantly. Zhao Hu was on the verge of a breakdown and roared, calling his men a bunch of useless fools. He yelled that he had ordered them to stop Han Zhang, but instead they had allowed him to succeed. Seeing that he had failed to frame Han Zhang through the mission, Zhao Hu's face grew even colder, and a malicious gleam appeared in his eyes as he obviously began to plot something more sinister. He immediately ordered his subordinates to go and inform all the teams to take absolutely all missions in Blue City. Upon returning home and learning of the conflict between Zhao Hu and Han Zhang, his teacher immediately offered to intervene and provide any assistance possible. Han Zhang politely declined his teacher's kind offer and bowed his head in thought. Although the guards claimed to be protecting the city, their actions seemed far from fulfilling that role. He grew suspicious that there might be serious problems within the organization. Hearing his analysis, his teacher's expression became serious. The teacher said that the roots were already rotten, and no amount of pruning would cure them. Only by burning everything to the ground could it be reborn. That was precisely why he had chosen him in the first place. The flames could burn the dead leaves and dispel the darkness, but they could also go out at any moment, the teacher said seriously. He would have to choose his own path from there. After discussing everything, Han Zhang looked at his teacher with some confusion and said that he was stuck at the bottom. He did not know how to make a breakthrough. His teacher replied casually but profoundly, with just 3 simple words: between life and death, leaving Han Zhang speechless for a moment. Hearing his teacher's words, he gradually realized that the key to breaking through to the 8th level lay in understanding the boundary between life and death. After dinner, instead of his usual training, he went to bed early, mentally replaying his teacher's words. Shortly after he lay down, Xia Yue cautiously opened the door, her cheeks slightly reddened, and she asked Han Zhang with a hint of anxiety if she could sleep with him tonight. He looked at her in confusion. He pointed out that the villa was large, and there were still many rooms available. Xia Yue lowered her head, her face reddening, and whispered that the teacher had locked all the other rooms, saying that it was a special arrangement for her. He scratched the back of his head, mentally cursing the teacher for this deliberate setup, and quickly said that he would sleep on the floor, as it was cooler there. Before he could react, Xia Yue threw herself into his arms, her voice firm and insistent. She insisted that he sleep on the bed that night, and so they slept together. Early the next morning, before sunrise, he arrived at the 0527 team's office, ready for new challenges. As soon as he opened the door, Bai Shuang and Yifan immediately approached him, their eyes full of mixed emotions. It was clear that they had found out about his rank. Bai Shuang bowed low without hesitation. She had thought that Han Zhan had gotten here through connections, and never imagined that he would be so strong. Han Zhan quickly helped her up, saying that everything was fine now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up. Bai Shuang thoughtfully propped her chin with her hand and said that she really couldn't understand what those bigwigs were thinking, since a genius like him had been thrown into such a lousy place. He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. Ordinary people change under the influence of their surroundings, but he intended to change the surroundings themselves. Yifan sighed and turned to him, saying that he had shown his talent too much. Someone like Zhao would not let it go so easily. As soon as Yifan finished speaking, Bai Shuang's expression turned gloomy. Yesterday, they were swamped with tasks, and today, there were none left. Something was definitely wrong here. Seeing the anxious faces of everyone present, he calmly waved his hand. He told them not to panic and not to rush. There was always a way to solve the problem. Without hesitation, he snatched the tablet from Bai Shuang's hands and, with a few quick taps, changed their base location to the city of Canghai. As soon as the update was complete, the task list on the tablet immediately filled up with a multitude of new missions. The number was almost overwhelming. Bai Shuang's eyes widened in shock, filled with disbelief. Where could so many tasks have come from? Bai Shuang's expression quickly changed to one of concern, and cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Although there were now more tasks, they would have to rush around all the cities to complete them. Wasn't this a sure path to disaster? She reminded them that the roads outside the city were swarming with high-level zergs. Despite the risks, the four of them resolutely set off in their car for the city of Canghai. Their goals were clear as they headed out on their mission. Along the way, several low-level insectoids attempted to attack their vehicle, but they were all crushed by the vehicle's impact, unable to stop their progress. Xia Yue looked at the crushed insectoids outside the window and couldn't help but ask what kind of creatures they were. He calmly explained. They were a type of insectoid known as ash flies. They usually move in swarms, and the larger the group, the greater their destructive power. As soon as he finished speaking, Yifang's ears pricked up, and a slight tension appeared on his face. When he suddenly straightened up and got a clear view of what was happening outside the car window, he was stunned, his face expressing complete disbelief. In the distance, a dark storm was rapidly approaching, consisting entirely of countless ash flies, creating a terrifying sight. With such a huge number of ash flies, their destructive power would be terrifying if they unleashed their full power. However, to his surprise, Yifan was delighted. His eyes lit up, and he shouted that this was the way to go and ordered them to rush straight at them, at full speed. Bai Shuang turned to him hesitantly, concern evident in her eyes. Were they really going to do this? Before she could say anything, she saw a caravan in the distance, mercilessly pursued by a storm of ash flies, their situation looking extremely dangerous. Bai Shuang asked anxiously if they should help them. It didn't look like they would last much longer. He answered without hesitation. Of course they would help. He ordered them to step on the gas and rush straight towards them. They couldn't just stand by and do nothing. And Fan became even more excited, waving his arms and shouting for them to rush forward at full speed and not stop. Bai Shuang turned the steering wheel sharply and pressed the gas pedal to the floor, accelerating the car toward the caravan at full speed. The car accelerated sharply, and Yifan, losing his balance, hit the seat hard, letting out a muffled groan. Despite the trickle of blood oozing from his forehead, Yifan seemed not to care. Instead, he shouted excitedly that it was amazing. The thrill was simply off the charts. The scene moved closer to the caravan. Inside the car, an elderly man anxiously told Shuang Sidin that the car had reached its speed limit. They couldn't go any faster. They would be caught up. Shuang Shiding remained silent with a worried expression on her face, while the elderly man, seeing her suffering, was forced to make a difficult decision. The elderly man grabbed the radio and gave a decisive order. He instructed all units to immediately begin executing the sacrifice plan. Shuang Sidin quickly grabbed the radio, trying to stop the old man's orders, but it was too late. The others had already begun to act. The last two vehicles in the convoy immediately turned around and rushed straight into the storm of ash flies. They sacrificed themselves to protect the main vehicle. Despite their desperate resistance, their attacks had no effect on the storm of ash flies, and the cars were instantly swallowed up by the swarm. Seeing the sacrifice of her comrades, Shuang Shiding's face was filled with guilt and anguish. The elderly man gently patted her on the shoulder, softly comforting her. He told her not to blame herself. At that moment, an unusual noise from behind caught Shuang Shiding's attention. She saw countless rays of shining energy streaking across the sky like a meteor shower, rushing straight toward the storm of ash flies. Yes, these energy beams were released by the main character standing in front, ready to take the brunt of the storm. As he waved his arms continuously, massive air blades materialized in the air, each carrying destructive power, gliding toward the storm of ash flies. In a matter of seconds, the once unstoppable storm was torn apart by his air blades, breaking into countless fragments that scattered through the air. Xuan Sidin watched in disbelief, her face full of shock. The machines accelerated. How was this possible? Someone had actually managed to dispel the terrifying storm of ash flies. They were shocked. Where did such a powerful master come from in such a place? However, the storm was not completely defeated. It quickly launched a counterattack, raining down countless poisonous stingers on him. To his surprise, just as the stingers were about to strike him, Yifan suddenly jumped forward, shielding him with his body from all attacks. Countless stingers pierced deep into Yifan's body, and with a muffled groan, he collapsed heavily to the ground. He quickly ran over to him, pulling the stingers out of his body one by one. The poison was extremely strong, capable of killing in seconds, so he had to act quickly. After removing all the stingers, he was stunned to see that Yifan was completely unharmed. The needles simply came out of his body on their own, and there was not even a scratch where they had entered. It was then that he realized that his talent was SS level, immortality, simply incredible. He paused for a moment, quickly analyzing the characteristics of the immortality talent in his mind. How was it different from rapid regeneration? While he was still deep in thought, Yifan suddenly sat up as if nothing had happened, a mischievous grin on his face. He asked if Han Zhan was trying to guess his talent. Without hesitation, Han Zhan turned away, coldly replying that he wasn't interested, and that he shouldn't flatter himself. Meanwhile, sitting in the car, he sneezed twice and thought to himself. But he wasn't sick. As soon as he finished speaking, Yue's voice rang out. She said that, in her opinion, they had reached the first mission location. Hearing this, Yifan instinctively raised his head. In the distance, several insectoids were raging wildly, preparing to quickly kill them all. The girl immediately clenched her fists, preparing to attack. Seeing this, a smirk appeared on his face. He told Yue that they could begin. This place is just swarming with points. When Yue took the form of the Fuzi Zither, the surrounding insectoids began their attack. Seeing this, he quickly snapped his fingers, and sharp sound blades flew out instantly. In the next moment, all the insectoids were in the form of the Fuzi Zither. The insectoids were sent straight to the underworld. Bai Shuang involuntarily swallowed, muttering that this guy was really strong. He exceeded her expectations every time. In the following period, several large-scale tasks of regrouping and mopping up in the city of Zhanghai were completed one after another. Such efficiency soon attracted the attention of the Zhanghai City Guard. Damn, when did such a powerful team appear in their city? They are too good. Excluding travel time, each mission takes only about 10 seconds. It's pure carnage. At that moment, the captain of the first squad used his authority to look at the list of completed missions. When he saw that all the marks were from Squad 0527 from Deep Blue City, he smashed his tablet on the ground in anger. The Deep Blue Site Squad had come here to steal missions from their city of Zhanghai. It was a slap in the face. He immediately gave the order. First squad, assemble. We are going to steal their missions. It's time to show them what we are capable of. Because of this incident, the entire guard squad of the city of Zhanghai was mobilized, and tensions began to rise. Boss, this time they will unite and show the Deep Blue City squad what they are capable of. But before he could finish, one of the chubby team members pointed out something terrible. The mission site was littered with the corpses of snakes with magical tails, and their valuable parts, such as snakeskin and gallbladders, had already been collected. This sight made the captain of the first squad pale with rage. He roared that the mission thieves had gone too far. Then he angrily slammed his fist on the hood of the car and shouted for them to turn around and chase after them. Today he would get answers. The driver was ready to rush into pursuit, but at that moment, one of his subordinates quickly grabbed him and said, "Captain, They have already completed their mission and appear to have left the city of Canhai. Someone had just seen their distinctive black pickup truck leaving the city. Hearing this, the captain of the squad spat out his soda in anger because it was a huge failure. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the guard organization, Su Ming-shan, the third in command, looked at the latest mission report with a sense of shock. Why had the mission completion rate in Canghai City, Deep Blue City, and the surrounding regions suddenly increased so dramatically? Had some special event occurred? His subordinate immediately reported that a group from Deep Blue City called the Task Tyrants had recently appeared, specializing in stealing missions from other cities, which had caused a chain reaction. Upon hearing this, Su Ming-xuan's curiosity was immediately piqued. He ordered his men to retrieve the squad's files. The Task Tyrants, he needed to see who these people were. Soon, 3 files on Squad 0527 were placed on his desk. The man ordered his subordinate to leave quickly. The first file was Ifan, the former captain of Squad 0527. After his spiritual contract was destroyed, he fell into despair and voluntarily demoted himself to the Guardian organization. The second file was Bai Shuang, an A-rank spiritual contract, codename Red Brushtail. Her talent was lying. This allowed her to turn lies into reality. She could change her name and appearance. As Su Ming-xuan read this, his eyebrows furrowed. 2 top-secret files in a row? How is that possible? Well, God loves threes. But surely the last file won't be top secret, right? But when he opened the last file and saw only the name, with all other details missing, he was speechless. Was there a mistake in the records? But just as Su Ming-xuan was still pondering the mysteries in the files, a sharp ring from the direct line suddenly pierced the silence of his office. As soon as the call was connected, a deep, stern voice came from the other end. It was Lin Jing-xuan. Su Ming-xuan felt a sudden jolt in his chest, and his grip on the phone tightened slightly. Lin Jing-xuan was an important figure. He rarely spoke to anyone personally, and the fact that he had contacted him now could only mean one thing. Something urgent was happening. Before Su Ming-xuan had time to comprehend the situation, the voice on the other end of the line spoke again, just as coldly and authoritatively, ordering him to stop investigating the files. After hanging up, Su Ming-xuan remained in a daze, cold sweat beading on his forehead. Who was Han Zhan really? At the same time, Han Zhan had just successfully led his 0527 squad to complete their 18th mission. The cleanup task, although difficult, it was carried out flawlessly under Han Zhan's leadership. The entire squad worked in complete harmony. Their coordination was smooth with virtually no delays. After the mission, the dust of battle settled, and Han quickly asked Bai Shuang to check their current squad rating. Hearing his request, Bai Shuang immediately agreed and quickly began reviewing the squad's mission score records. Meanwhile, Yifan stood next to her, filled with excitement, already convinced that they must have taken first place. However, Bai Shuang's expression suddenly darkened when she looked at the score report on the screen. Their squad's current score was 1,800 points, but, to their shock, they were still in last place. This revelation hit them like a bolt of lightning. Yifan and Xia Yue were stunned, their faces expressing complete disbelief. They had completed the missions at such a high speed. Could someone really be faster than them? Bai Shuang was boiling with rage. Her eyes were practically on fire. This was Zhao's doing. He was definitely behind this, trying to prevent them from overtaking them. After listening to her, Han Zhan calmly checked the ranking table of the other squads and quickly noticed the discrepancy. The squads that had originally been at the bottom now all had 2,300 points, a number that seemed too similar to be a coincidence. He explained that it was obvious they had coordinated this. After completing the tasks, they combined their points and distributed them to one person. Since the points were earned legally, technically it did not violate any rules of the Guardians organization. Nevertheless, the whole process was a calculated maneuver that left a bitter taste. Bai Shuang gritted her teeth in despair, practically boiling with rage. Despite her indignation, Han Zhan remained calm. There's no need to worry too much. The gap in points isn't that big. They still have a chance to make up for lost ground. He then ordered them to return to Deep Blue City. They had stayed here long enough. Shortly after, Li Shudong saw Xia Yue and Han Zhan enter the villa. and he quickly approached them with a concerned expression on his face. Hanzan said they had made some progress, but the result was not as good as expected. He continued that the only good outcome was the rescue of the Shang family's convoy. This rescue stood out as a small victory. Upon hearing this, Li Shudong suddenly burst out laughing. Ha ha, so they were the ones who rescued that girl from the Shang family? He was the very same insensitive guy she had mentioned. It was no surprise that she had been pestering him for the past few days, asking how to awaken and become a powerful spiritual contract. Seeing Han Zhang's confusion, Li Shudong smiled and explained that he had known grandfather Shang Shiding for many years. He was his old friend. To him, she was like his own granddaughter. And the Shang family, they are behind Deep Shang Technology, one of the 5 largest corporations. They develop advanced weapons for. In fact, this whole mission was specially arranged by the Shang family. They wanted to get rid of their precious granddaughter, but who would have thought that someone would be able to thwart their plan? They really threw a spanner in the works. Han Zhan was shocked to hear this. Seeing his agitated reaction, Li Shudong waved his hand and laughed. In fact, he would now give the items he had obtained to the young man. As he said this, he carefully turned the combination lock on the case. The lid slowly opened, revealing 2 vials inside. These were breakthrough serums. Not only did they significantly improve physical characteristics, but they could also enhance innate talents. He handed the vials to Xia Yue and Hanbin. He handed them 2 vials, each of which emitted a faint glow, hinting at the enormous power inside. Xia Yue and Hanbin exchanged glances and took the vials without hesitation. Together, they respectfully thanked their teacher and immediately drank the serums in one swift motion, wasting no time. In the next moment, a stunning power burst forth from within him, as if invisible light enveloped his entire body. In just 2.5 seconds, he broke through to the 2nd-rank Spirit Master level, becoming stronger than ever before. At the same time, Xia Yue, who was standing next to him, underwent a similar transformation. Her spiritual energy rapidly increased, and it seemed as if she was enveloped in a mysterious power. In just a few seconds, her power broke through to the 2nd rank, radiating an aura of undeniable power. Her innate talent also awakened, granting her a divine power known as the 4 Symbols. This new power combined the supreme forces of wind, fire, thunder, and lightning. As if that weren't enough, her newly acquired divine power also unlocked 2 completely new musical scores, Wildfire and 16 Thunder Strikes. These pieces were meant to further enhance her offensive capabilities, allowing her to unleash destructive flames and thunderbolts through her music, especially in battles against formidable enemies. Feeling the overwhelming surge of power within her, Xia Yue couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. This is incredible. Gigi never thought his power could increase so quickly. Still stunned by the sudden surge of power, Xia Yue looked at her hands, feeling the immense energy coursing through her veins. Li Shudong couldn't help but laugh at their reaction. Just as they were enjoying the joy of their newfound strength, his phone suddenly rang, shattering the brief moment of peace. As soon as he answered, Bai Shuang's anxious and hurried voice came through. They had a problem. They needed to quickly check the mission list. It was a mission with a 3rd-level monster and a reward of 100 points. They decided to discuss this task in person at a meeting. After giving Bai Shuang the order to gather, he wasted no time grabbing Xia Yue and running out the door, heading for the mission location. Shortly after they left, the butler suddenly appeared at the entrance to the villa. His expression was serious. The butler went inside and respectfully reported that Mrs. Lin Jun had been found, but she refused to return. Shortly thereafter, all members of Team 0527 arrived at the meeting point. Bai Shuang asked anxiously if the captain had made a decision. Without hesitation, he replied seriously, "This is the perfect chance for them to pull ahead in points." Bai Shuang still looked worried. Frowning, she told the captain that Yue Jia was extremely dangerous. The risk in this battle was too high. Seeing her concern, he calmly asked if she knew what a red alert really meant. It was not just a normal mission notification. It meant that they had no choice but to fight. If they did not destroy Yue Jia, then once he fully matured, he would destroy the entire city and take countless innocent lives. As defenders of the city, their original mission was never just to earn points. Their mission was to protect humanity. As soon as he finished speaking, Ifan immediately raised his bottle with a loud laugh. After all, it sounded like a good toast. Bai Shuang's expression also became firm, her eyes shining with determination. She would drive the car and immediately take everyone to the mission site. Meanwhile, the other teams had already gathered on the roofs of tall buildings, watching the ominous scene unfolding above the city. Dark clouds hung overhead, terrifying lightning flashed in the sky, as if a destructive storm was about to break. The captain raised his binoculars, peering into the distant area shrouded in darkness. It was a black curtain that seemed capable of isolating all sensory detections, and its speed was so high that they would not even have time to get there. A member of the squad looked at the captain and asked in confusion if they had been sent by the higher-ups to deal with the monster. So why announce the mission publicly? The captain turned around and sighed. Ugesh's combat power is too great. They cannot defeat him alone. The squad member looked at the captain in shock and exclaimed, "Damn, is he really that terrible?" The captain nodded and calmly said yes, so they shouldn't interfere yet. Let the first wave of decoys go in first, and they would act afterwards. At that moment, Han Zhan led his squad to the mission site, where the third-rank monster was located, and everyone was stunned as they stared at the ominous black veil. Bai Shuang slapped the side of the vehicle and asked seriously if everyone was ready. Once they entered the black veil, there would be no turning back. Han Zhan, holding Yue's hand, led the squad into the black veil. He assured them not to worry. Everything would be fine. He said it was time to go. They were going in. Inside the black curtain, there was an eerie and frightening atmosphere. The surroundings were covered with cobwebs, creating a sense of hidden danger. As soon as they entered, the black curtain enveloped them. Han Zhan felt a chilling sensation that he was being watched. He immediately ordered everyone to be on alert and be prepared for anything. Yue also felt an eerie sensation, as if invisible eyes were watching her, which caused her a wave of unease. Despite this, the group continued to move deeper into the darkness, and the oppressive atmosphere grew heavier as they advanced. Suddenly, they all stopped dead in their tracks. Yu clung to the main character. Bai Shuang calmly explained that the black veil had a unique ability called life absorption. As long as they were inside, it would gradually suck out their strength until they died. Even Ifan, who had always been fearless, looked serious for the first time. He said they had 30 minutes. Bai Shuang pointed ahead and asked if that was the black sphere. Alkosh nodded that yes, it was. Looking at the black sphere, Han Zhan thoughtfully asked whether destroying it would solve the problem. Before they could do anything, the ground beneath them began to soften, pulling them in and steadily lowering them down. In the blink of an eye, Bai Shuang's body was already half submerged in the ground. Ifan tried to reach out and grab her, but it seemed too late. The ground was sinking too fast. Suddenly, a strong wind blew up, knocking Han Zhan away, and a huge wall appeared in front of them. This was Ugesha's second ability, the power to give life to inanimate objects. He could not only absorb life, but also bestow it on anything, be it tools or even the earth itself. Then they would break through together, Han Zhan said resolutely, while Yue transformed into her contract spirit form, ready for battle. Han Zhan began to play that soul-crushing melody, a song that could bring entire armies to their knees. They expected the wall to collapse under the onslaught, but to their surprise, it began to repair itself, repairing the damage from their attacks. Han Zhan frowned, looking at the wall with annoyance. What now? Its regeneration is too strong. They cannot overcome it. Before they could finish talking, countless walls identical to the previous ones suddenly rose up from beneath them, completely trapping them. The monster's intention was clear. It wanted to seal Han Zhan and the others in, leaving them no chance of escape. Suddenly, a rapid sound rang out in the air, and the tension around them thickened. Yue shouted to Hanbin to be careful. Some kind of scum flew at them, and flew past so quickly that Gigi barely had time to return. The flying insect broke through the wall and disappeared into the darkness. Han Zhan stared in shock and whispered, wondering if he had seen correctly. Was that it? Yue asked curiously what it was. Han Zhan quickly replied that he would explain later. For now, they needed to run. After all, the creature was already preparing to deliver another deadly blow. At that moment, the squad waiting outside finally sprang into action. The captain, observing the ominous atmosphere, warned his team to be on their guard. This place is too dangerous. One of the squad members assured him that the captain should not worry. They had third-rank spiritualists and contract spirits. Even if they couldn't complete the mission, they would still be able to get out unscathed. However, before he could finish his sentence, the ground beneath them suddenly began to collapse. The ground exploded, filling the air with dust and debris. When the dust settled, one of the squad members looked at the captain, warning him of great danger. But before he could even see his face, when suddenly the captain lunged forward and grabbed him by the throat, his grip tightening. At that moment, a flying insect crawled out of the captain's hair and quickly dug into the squad member's eye. The squad members screamed in agony and collapsed. Meanwhile, Bai Shuang and Yifan cautiously walked down the narrow passageway, the silence around them deafening. Bai Shuang glanced at Yifan and quietly asked if he was scared. She really envied him. With his abilities, he didn't need to worry about his life. Yifan smiled and shook his head. It was more like a punishment. He just felt that if they couldn't escape, they might as well give up. Bai Shuang shouted, "Who said they couldn't escape?" Yifan looked confused. He asked if she had a plan. Bai Shuang gently placed her hand on the wall and began to recite a spell. "Awaken. You are nothing but lifeless soil." As soon as she finished speaking, there was a crack and the wall began to split. Yifan was stunned, exclaiming what kind of power this was. She could really break Yugesha's ability. When the wall collapsed, a figure slowly emerged from the cloud of dust. Bai Shuang shouted, "Captain, is it him?" Yihan also noticed them. He quickly descended to assess the condition of his comrades. And there they were, side by side. The four of them were finally reunited, although the danger was far from over. But before they could catch their breath, a huge stone fist came crashing down on Bai Shuang and Yifan. Hanzan shouted for them to quickly get out of the way. The rock was only a millimeter away from them. Yifanya was almost completely crushed. Fortunately, Hanzan had activated his skills in advance, blocking the deadly blow and saving them from serious injury. He jumped in front of them, telling them to step back for now. He would take care of it. A giant stone golem stood before them, tall and menacing. Hanzan wasted no time and shouted, "Quick victory, rise up!" The two forces collided with tremendous power, scattering smoke and dust. Yifanya and Bai Shuang jumped away from the scene of the battle, but they knew that the shockwave would still reach them. As soon as it reached them, they were thrown several meters away by the impact. "All these creatures were summoned by the monster," said Gigi. "They need to destroy its core as quickly as possible. As soon as the black barrier is released, its core merges with the barrier itself. Only that black sphere remains. If they can destroy that sphere, they can kill Yugisha once and for all," said the guy with determination. The girl immediately stood in front of him and turned to him, firmly telling him to go and leave this battle to them. But the stone golem seemed to understand their plan and rushed at them with all its might. Yifan, impulsive as always, rushed forward without hesitation to meet it face to face. He activated his skill, granting him complete immortality. Yifan met the golem's blow with his whole body, then looked at Hanzang and said that his immortality could only withstand 6 blows. He needed to come up with a plan quickly. Hanzang began to recite his spell. 6 divine spirits, in the service of the emperor, must appear at his call. When Hanzhang's spell came to an end, the melody echoed across the battlefield, and 6 divine spirits appeared. Their mighty figures loomed over the scene, shrouded in dark clouds, ready to unleash their destructive lightning power. The divine spirits raised their hands and shouted in unison, and the sky crackled with electric light. Thunder rumbled as enormous energy gathered above them, as if the heavens themselves were preparing for a mighty strike. A blinding bolt of lightning struck from the sky, striking the stone giant with incomparable force. Lightning wrapped around his body, burning the air and causing everything around him to shimmer with heat. The power of the lightning was so overwhelming that even Ifanya was not spared. His body was thrown into the air by the shock wave and slammed hard into the ground. Thunder rumbled again as another deafening crack echoed. A glowing sphere of lightning descended from above. The stone giant, already weakened, began to crack under the pressure. Its once solid form was now crumbling, cracks spreading across its surface. With a sharp crack, the stone giant finally shattered into pieces, breaking into countless tiny fragments that scattered in the wind like dust. Yifan landed smoothly on his feet, easily regaining his balance, his composure unbroken despite the previous blow. He looked ahead, a slight smile playing on his lips as a feeling of victory filled his heart. But before he could fully enjoy the moment, Han Zhang suddenly spat out blood. Han Zhang's stomach was torn open, blood spurting from the gaping wound. With a loud crack, Han Zhang's body was thrown across the battlefield and slammed into the rocks. When the smoke cleared, a huge insectoid creature emerged from the shadows. Its tall figure cast a dark silhouette on the battlefield. Yifan's face was full of shock, engraved with disbelief. A fully grown stranger stood before him. The scene became even stranger when the ominous figure of Bai Shuang appeared behind the monster. Her cold smile betrayed her intentions as she gently embraced the beast, as if they were allies. This beast had been hidden next to her for an eternity. She smiled, waiting for the perfect moment to release it and deliver a fatal blow. Han Zhan struggled to get up, his body beaten and weakened. He asked why she was doing this. Bai Shuang's evil smile remained, but tears began to fall from her eyes, creating a stark contrast with her expression. She turned around, her voice cold and determined. She wants to kill them all. There was something strange in her eyes. Yifan and Han Zhan exchanged anxious glances. They looked at Bai Shuang again, and Han Zhan suddenly exclaimed that this was not the first time. Yifan, curious and puzzled, asked what he meant by the second time. Han Zhan pointed to Bai Shuang's eyes. She's possessed. There's a silver shadow in her pupils. It's the legendary Shiji Chun. It's a fourth-rank insect known for its terrifying ability to corrode the brain. Once Shiji Chun penetrates its host's brain, it gains complete control over their body, turning them into a mere puppet, completely under its power. Or still, it can reproduce asexually and divide into more parasites, spreading rapidly. In the story of Lanxing, there was once a powerful 7th-rank spirit master who fell victim to Shiji Chun. As a result, he slaughtered an entire city that he had once sworn to protect. It took the organization a tremendous amount of time, resources, and manpower to finally defeat him. And even then, the losses were heavy. According to historical records, Shiji Chun was completely destroyed 32 years ago in the First War Zone. So why did he reappear here? Yifan stood in front of Han Bin without hesitation, firmly stating that the captain must flee. Han Zhan shook his head. They cannot escape. The black veil of the adult Yuguze, having absorbed the recently deceased young specimen, expanded its radius tenfold. At their current speed, they would not reach the edge before it caught up with them and killed them. Han Zhan explained to Yifan that he just needed to buy time for one song. Han Zhang's wounds began to heal rapidly. His breathing stabilized, as if a powerful force was awakening within him. Seeing this, the expression on the possessed Bai Shuang's face changed. She immediately shouted for him to be stopped. In response, the adult Yu Guozhe quickly fired a dazzling laser beam directly at Han Zhang. Without hesitation, Yufan activated his immortal ability, summoning a powerful shield in front of Han Bin and successfully blocking the deadly attack. The laser struck the shield and exploded, scattering its enormous energy in both directions. It was then that Bai Shuang suddenly appeared next to Yifan, lightly touching his shoulder and using her power of deception. She wanted to strip him of his immortality. However, Yifan remained unmoved by her attempt to deceive him. Without hesitation, he headbutted Bai Shuang, coldly stating that whether it was real or not was not for her to decide. She fell to the ground in shock, and at that moment, the parasite that controlled her came out, trying to take control of Yifan. He forcibly used one charge of his immortal power and tore the vile parasite out of his flesh. He mercilessly crushed the disgusting creature in his hand, ending the threat as its vile blood splattered everywhere. The adult specimen hovered above, smirking down at Yifan. The monster was curious to see how long he would last, she added mockingly, quickly firing another cannonball straight at him. Yifan used his immortal ability again to block the attack in the same way, but his strength was clearly beginning to wane. He turned to Han Bin, his face showing signs of exhaustion. Han Zhan severed his connection with Yue and calmly said that she and Yifan deal with the parasite. He would take care of the adult. At that moment, Han Zhan's energy surged violently. He never thought he would be driven so far. 8 limbs fist. First limb activate. Han Zhan charged his energy through the ground, causing it to tremble and crack, as if the whole world was preparing for this grand strike. Then he soared into the air like a huge meteor, rushing towards the adult Yugude at a staggering speed, his power at its peak. However, Han Zhang's full power strike was effortlessly neutralized by the Wanderer, as if it were nothing more than a light breeze. Although the blow did not reach its target, it made the Wanderer take Han Zhang seriously. Such a young age and such incredible strength, the Wanderer noted with surprise. Saying this, he slowly pulled the sword from his mouth. As soon as he finished speaking, he swung the ancient sword in his hand and attacked with a cold smile on his lips. He said with contempt in his voice that we would see how many blows he could withstand. Taking advantage of the Wanderer's momentary confusion, Han Zhan quietly put on the gloves that his older brother Wei Qing had given him. With a flash of determination in his eyes, he delivered a powerful blow aimed directly at the Wanderer. With a sharp crack, the powerful chi of the sword instantly shattered into pieces, its force so overwhelming that even the air seemed to tremble. Seeing this, the Wanderer was stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could this pair of gloves end up in Han Zhang's hands? More than 10 years ago, they had killed one of their Zerg kings on the battlefield. They belonged to the strong. But Han Zhang was not strong. As soon as the words left his lips, the stranger's energy flared up, and with a furious burst, he intensified his attack. He may not be strong, but his opponent is just a simple Zerg king. Before his words had even finished, Han Zhan quickly performed the second form of Ba Ji Chuan. His figure moved like lightning, closing the distance to the stranger in an instant, and launching a swift and precise attack. As soon as Han Zhan's blow struck Yu Yin's right rib, the ancient sword in his hand pierced Han Zhan's left chest with a sharp, metallic sound. The intense blow instantly threw both fighters more than 20 meters apart, as if an insurmountable chasm had opened between them. Faced with this situation, Han Zhang couldn't help but curse in frustration. He had to defeat him before he completely absorbed the energy of the young men, otherwise he would have no chance of winning. A thought flashed through his mind, and without hesitation, Han Zhan activated the second seal of the 8 limits fist, his eyes filled with determination. No more delays. There was only one way to survive: fight. An endless stream of spiritual energy surged into his limbs, and Han Zhan darted forward, like lightning, quickly closing the distance to Yu Yin. Before Yu Yin could react, Han Zhan's fist struck his chest with stunning force, like a thunderclap. In the next moment, Yu Yin's massive body shattered into pieces, as if a giant rock had been smashed. Watching this scene, Han Zhan said indifferently, "You lost." However, Yu Yin suddenly burst into maniacal laughter, his voice dripping with contempt. "No, this is not the end." Before Han Zhan could even comprehend what was happening, Yu Ying began to recover at an astonishing speed. What shocked Han Zhan even more was that he completely absorbed the energy and merged with the entire black barrier, becoming one with the void itself. Floating in the air, he looked coldly at Han Zhan and said, "Kid, it's over." At the same time, Yifan urgently informed Han Zhang of the bad news. Bai Shuang had disappeared. Worse still, the activated soil had turned into yellow-brown chains, firmly binding Han Zhang and the others. The Wanderer spread his arms wide, instantly summoning a massive meteor. "It's all over." The meteor, capable of destroying the world, rushed towards Han Zhang and his group. At the critical moment, Yifan activated his immortal talent, managing to block the approaching attack. However, in the face of the meteor, the power of ordinary people seemed insignificant. His last resistance lasted only 2.5 seconds before it was broken. Just as Yifan was about to collapse, the meteor suddenly stopped in mid-air, immediately followed by a deep, powerful voice ringing in everyone's ears: 8th urgency, 6th opening. In the next instant, regardless of whether it was the Wanderer or the meteor, both were wiped out by the power of the Golden Fist. The insect was in shock, but soon it was gone for good. When the huge black curtain covering 1,000 miles completely dissipated, everyone was in shock and looked up, as the figure of Li Shudong appeared before them, who was glad he had made it in time. Looking at the figure of his teacher, Han Zhang's heart, which had been tense, finally relaxed. With a crooked smile, he muttered that he could finally finish his shift, and then completely passed out. Li Shudong glanced at Yifan and Xia Yue and calmly ordered them to take the old ninth back first, and he would take care of everything here, as they needed to clear the area. Yifan shuddered, repeating the words, "Clear the area," while at the same time, a beetle quietly crawled away from the other side. The scene immediately changed to a hospital. When Hanzhan regained consciousness, 2.5 days had already passed. Xia Yue, sitting by his bed, explained that after he lost consciousness, the teacher had cleared away the corrosive bugs, but they couldn't find the queen, so the mission was not yet complete. He asked where the alcoholic was now. Meanwhile, Yifan, desperately deflecting the meteor, suffered severe injuries, with broken bones and veins. Although he survived thanks to his immortal talent, he was still in intensive care. At that moment, a breathless nurse ran in and asked if they were Yifan's colleagues, as he had suddenly disappeared. The guys were shocked. The main character had no idea how something like this could have happened. Hearing this, Xia Yue suddenly remembered that their teacher had said that they needed to track down the corrosive bugs themselves, and since Bai Shuang's disappearance was related to the corrosive beetle, Yifan must have gone after them. Seeing this, Hanzhan quickly got out of bed and explained that Bai Shuang was a breakthrough point, a 4th-rank corrosive bug that could reproduce asexually and divide. Once the queen was killed, the other subordinate beetles would disappear, and Yifan must have understood something and went to look for her. Xia Yue sighed deeply and continued that there was something else. The guard organization had kept 100 points from Squad 0527, and they didn't even leave the Wanderer's corpse behind. All the materials were taken to the guard headquarters, since the mission was ultimately completed by the teacher. He asked if the teacher hadn't said anything about it. Xia Yue lowered her voice and replied that he said it was a matter between them and the guards of Deep Blue City, and no one else would interfere. Hanzhang's anger flared, and he immediately grabbed Xia Yue's hand and left, saying that they were going to take back what belonged to them. Meanwhile, at the guards' headquarters, a group of people were happily discussing how Captain Zhao was really generous this time, especially since he had distributed 4th-rank insectoid race materials to all of them. At that moment, Hanzhan and Xia Yue kicked the door open and burst in, shouting without hesitation, "Where is Xiao Hu? Tell him to come out." As soon as these words were spoken, an eerie silence fell over the entire hall. Only Zhang Xiaobei smiled and told Captain Han to watch his words, as this was not the place to be rowdy. He reached for his belt and immediately swung it and rushed at Hanzhang, but before he could get close, Hanzhang slapped him hard across the face, instantly putting all his strength into the blow. The guy fell. Hanzhang clenched his fist and made a gesture as if he was about to strike, saying that no one had told him that his smile was asking for a punch. The people around were stunned by this scene. One of them muttered that in just one round he was already being rubbed into the ground, and it was outrageous. Hearing the whisper, an enraged Zhang Xiaobei drew his dagger and rushed to attack again. However, Hanzhan once again effortlessly parried the attack with a single movement, and began to beat the ground, saying that it seemed he had not learned from his mistakes, and he would force him to obey. At that moment, Xiao Hu finally burst in, full of rage, and asked Hanzhang what the hell he thought he was doing. Hanzhang smirked, grabbed Zhang Xiao's collar, and demanded that he apologize to him and his team. Xiao Hu snorted contemptuously, saying that he was dreaming, and did he really think he deserved an apology? Without hesitation, he ordered his subordinates to send the video to the third-in-command, Su Mingshan, and the inspection team at headquarters. Xiao Hu, smug as ever, said that the guy was finished as soon as headquarters saw the video, and he would be severely punished. Xiao Yue looked anxiously at Hanzhang, but he reassured her with a smile, telling her not to worry, because as long as the teacher was around, they wouldn't dare touch him. Sure enough, a moment later, one of Xiao Hu's subordinates reported that headquarters said it was an internal matter for the Deep Blue City guards, and they had to deal with it themselves. The inspection team added that the young man who had fought well asked if Hanzhang would be interested in joining them. Hearing this, Xiao Hu finally lost his temper, his face red with rage, and he cursed that it was bureaucratic nonsense. But in the current situation, Xiao Hu could only swallow his anger. He asked Hanzhan what he wanted as an apology to avoid further escalation. Since the materials from the elusive creature had already been divided up, Han Zhang made his demand to open the guard's storage and allow him to choose whatever his team needed until they were satisfied. Xiaohu immediately wanted to refuse, as the guard storage contained carefully selected items, each of which was extremely valuable. And this was out of the question. Han Zhan smiled and replied that this was impossible, because what could he take if he filled both hands? And if the team leader Xiao couldn't even agree to that, he would begin to doubt his sincerity. Xiaohu thought to himself that he was right. Even if Han Zhan filled both hands, he would not be able to carry much. Finally, Xiaohu gave in, but set a condition. Only Han Zhan could enter, and when he came out, he could not take anything except what he could carry in his hands. Han Zhan quickly released the semi-conscious Zhang Xiaobei, smiled with a click, and agreed to the deal. After finishing speaking, Han Zhan's eyes narrowed, and he silently muttered to himself that he would make sure not to hide anything except what he could carry in his hands. At that moment, he put on the storage ring. Han Zhan led Xiao Yue to the entrance of the treasure room. The guards at the door looked worried and whispered to each other, wondering if Captain Zhao would really let this guy in, and if it wasn't too risky. Xiaohu smiled and replied that there were tens of thousands of items in the vault, some of which even he couldn't identify. And even if he could identify something, how much could he carry in his hands? The guard agreed with his boss's opinion. Meanwhile, upon entering the vault, Han Zhan held a book on treasure appraisal in his hands. He was dazzled by the enormous amount of treasures before him. Rare materials such as Donghualian grass, the limbs of third-rank insectoid warriors, the wings of fifth-rank ghost butterflies, and even rare shells, used for protective equipment from the 6 worlds. All of these were priceless items. Naturally, Han Zhan decided to take them all. Without hesitation, Han Zhan activated his virtual ring and began collecting all the items he considered valuable. An hour passed and Han Zhan still hadn't come out, which made Xiaohu increasingly anxious. Just as he was about to order someone to check on him, he was suddenly interrupted by a voice apologizing for the wait. Seeing Han Zhan's figure, Xiao Yue quickly approached and asked how everything had gone. In response to her question, Han Zhan simply smiled meaningfully, glanced at the entrance to the treasure room, before quickly turning and leading her away, saying that he would tell her when they got home, and adding nothing more. Seeing this, Xiao Hu's face was filled with confusion, wondering why this guy came back empty-handed. Had he really taken nothing? He quickly ordered his subordinates to check the vault, but the report they brought back immediately stunned Xiao Hu. This guy had emptied half of the storage room. Xiao Hu was so enraged that his ears turned red, and he seethed with anger at the insatiable greed. The items in this storage room were the property of the guard organization. If only a few items had been taken, it could have been covered up. But now that half of it was missing, would the guard organization let him get away with it? Xiao Hu angrily ordered his subordinates to report the situation truthfully, but was shocked when the response came from headquarters. Han did well. Xiao Hu was stunned, his heart filled with disappointment at such bureaucratic nonsense. Returning to the villa and placing the ring on the table, Han Zhan sat down on the sofa and said that this would serve as a lesson for Xiao Hu, and he would see if he dared to behave so arrogantly in the future. At that moment, Xiao Yue approached, freshly washed, with a slight flutter in her eyes. She said it was late and time to go to bed. Together. Ever since he was injured last time, she had been so afraid of losing him, and tonight, no matter what, she would not let him go. Just as they were about to take further action, the door suddenly swung open. Standing in the doorway was a girl wearing a loose nightgown over her naked body. Xiao Yue's face instantly turned red. She quickly moved away from him, deeply embarrassed, and quietly asked when someone else had arrived. Seeing this, Han Zhan asked in confusion who she was. The girl smiled slyly and said playfully that they lived in her grandfather's house and still didn't know her. He immediately realized that the girl in front of him was Li Lin Yuan, the teacher's granddaughter. What shocked him even more was that she had awakened one of the 10 divine weapons of antiquity, the cauldron of the divine dragon. Han Zhan quickly covered his eyes and pointed at her clothes in bewilderment. Was it normal to wear nothing? Li Lingxuan was carefree, shaking her head lightly. This was the most comfortable state for her at home. Being in this state helped her find inspiration and create. Xiao Yue clearly did not understand what she meant by creativity. So Li Ling Shuai explained that, hadn't her grandfather told them? She was an author of fan fiction on the internet. As she said this, she suddenly leaned closer to Xiao Yue, smiling playfully. It seemed that she had just interrupted them. Were they going to continue? If not, then they could continue. And she pushed the girl away, looking at the guy with a very predatory gaze. The girl said that they had just met and had no emotional foundation. How could she be so reckless? Li Lingxuan turned her head in confusion and asked if contracts really needed an emotional foundation. Realizing her misunderstanding, she immediately blushed and quietly said that she understood now. Hanzan took the opportunity to smoothly change the subject. If they signed a contract, he could help her strengthen it even more with divine light. Li Lingxuan was visibly excited upon hearing this. She was ready to sign the contract right away. With that, she eagerly began to unbutton her robe. Seeing her rush towards him, Han Zhan was stunned. What was the connection between signing a contract and taking off her clothes? However, Li Lingxuan casually explained that, as a fan fiction author, her works required close contact in order to sign a contract. Hearing this, Han Zhan and Xiao Yue's expressions immediately darkened. No wonder your books were banned, Han Zhan muttered, shaking his head helplessly. As soon as the words left his lips, golden chains appeared on Han Zhang and Li Lingxuan, binding them tightly. Then Han Zhang suddenly opened his eyes wide and let out a low growl. Divine reflection. In the next moment, a powerful surge of energy burst forth from within Li Lingxuan, and in just 2.5 seconds, a shadowy figure formed above her head. As more and more energy poured into Li Lingxuan's body, her energy information began to change dramatically. Not only did she evolve from a level 1 spiritual weapon to an SSS level 1, but she also awakened a divine ability, true body purification, one of the 10 ancient divine artifacts. This ability allowed her to absorb the essence of precious materials or insectoid creatures rich in spiritual energy, condensing the energy and restoring it to its original form. Seeing this, Han Zhan was stunned. This talent could extract spiritual energy. Didn't that mean that in the future she would be able to easily obtain pure spiritual energy and make breakthroughs at will? Meanwhile, Li Lingxuan returned to reality and looked at her hands, her eyes filled with disbelief. Was this her talent? Han Zhan smiled and replied that yes, her talent was incredibly strong. How about trying it out now? Hearing this, Xiao Yue, sensing the situation, said for them to continue while she went to get some water. As she left, she couldn't help but think that this younger sister also had the talent of a divine spiritual weapon. What a surprise. However, 2.5 minutes later, when Xiao Yue returned with the teapot, she suddenly heard a rustling sound coming from the room. Someone wanted to insert something, but someone else was in pain. Xiao Yue froze for a moment, then her face flushed with anger, and she kicked the door open. She said, "It's so late, what are you two doing?" When she opened her eyes and saw the situation inside, her bright face instantly turned red with embarrassment. It turned out that they were cleaning the materials by putting them inside. At that moment, the divine furnace under Li Lingxuan's control suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Shortly after, several white elixirs gathered in Han Zhang's hands. Seeing this, Xiao Yue quickly asked what it was. Han Zhang explained that it was a spiritual energy pill. By swallowing it, one could increase their spiritual energy by at least 1%. Xiao Yue was amazed. That's impressive. Li Lingxuan, now in her human form, suddenly ran up and knocked him to the ground with all her weight. She told him that the alchemical fire in her body had not been extinguished, and that the true fire was burning. She asked him to quickly put it out. Han Zhang's face turned red, and while he was telling her to stop, his hands honestly pulled Xiao Yue into the situation. The first girl who was on top of him felt even more energy, while Xiao Yue fell straight into the arms of the main character. The girl on top felt very good. It was as if she were in paradise. And the guy below was barely holding back the whole situation. Now Xiao Yue said she had no strength left to hold on, and they both straddled the main character. So lucky, so lucky. After the night was over, looked at the two women in his arms and suddenly felt like a winner in life. Li Lin-yuan's face wore a satisfied expression, the corners of her lips slightly raised. She hadn't expected him to be so impressive. Even Xia Yue couldn't help but sigh. After these 8 exchanges, she felt that the power inside her had become much purer. Hanzan saw the situation and quickly stood up. He coughed twice to smooth over the awkwardness and ordered them to go with him on business. The girls didn't understand what he meant, but from that day on, they would officially begin investigating the 10 domestic insects and searching for the missing members of Team 0527. Li Lin Yuan looked confused, suddenly froze, and asked who was missing. Xia showed her the photo, but when she saw Bai Shuang's photo, her eyes suddenly fluttered, and she quietly said that she thought she had seen this person before. Didn't she often go to the club at night? Xia asked how she knew. Li Lingxuan replied that she often went to that club. The Breeze Ballroom was the largest in all of Deep Blue City. Hearing this, he felt a surge of hope in his heart. Great. He didn't expect them to make such a breakthrough in the investigation so quickly. With that, Hanzhan took out a spray and sprayed it on both of them. Hanzhan explained that it was azalea flower spray. Insects are very sensitive to this scent, and when they smell it, they go crazy. After doing all this, Hanzhan led Xia Yue and Li Lingxuan to the Breeze Ballroom. The women were already having a great time there. He asked the bartender if there was a woman named Hong Yanwei here, and the man suddenly smiled strangely. "Did you say Hong Yanwei?" Hanzhan confirmed. "Yes, Hong Yanwei." As soon as the words were spoken, the bar instantly fell silent, and all eyes were on him. Just as Hanzhan was about to act, the bartender suddenly shouted excitedly. "That guest just said, Hong Yanwei. He'll pay for everyone here." As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd around them erupted in applause, shouting, "Wow, awesome!" Hanzhan was a little stunned, and the bartender continued to explain that yesterday, a guest had drunk a lot here, and said that someone would come and say the words, Hong Yanwei, and that he would pay the bar bill and close the establishment. Xia Yue frowned. Who was this person? But the guy immediately realized that this person must be Yifan. At that moment, the bartender took out a box and handed it to Han Zheng. "This is what that guest left behind. He asked me to deliver it personally." Han Zheng took the box, which was shrouded in a faint golden light. It was Yifan's spiritual energy, a symbol of his immortal talent. Han Zheng opened the box and found a note inside with 2 pieces of information. The first was about Yimin, the leader of Han Zheng's family. The second was about the guard team in Deep Blue City, as well as the devouring insect. Li Lin Yuan looked at the note in confusion. Was it something left by a teammate? What message was he trying to convey? Han Zheng paused for a moment, then replied that the parasitic queen had begun to divide in February. This meant that there were now 7 infected carriers. The information was critical, helping them quickly narrow down their search. Having said that, Hanzhan turned to Xia Yue and Li Lin Yuan, telling them to wait there for a moment. He needed to use the restroom. When Hanzhan entered the restroom, he passed a middle-aged man. He rudely pushed him aside and said he was in a hurry. The man, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped, and his face contorted into an expression of pure madness. Damn it! The smell of stone flowers. Without further warning, he swung his fist at Hanzhan. Seeing the approaching fist, Hanzhan immediately activated all his locks and quickly struck with his palm, sending the man flying several meters. As the man retreated, a silvery white insect shadow quickly emerged from his body. Han Zheng recognized it as one of the infectious beetles and, without hesitation, grabbed the insect, squeezed it tightly, and crushed it into a pulp. That's how you deal with these creatures. Hearing the noise, Xia Yue and Li Lin Yuan ran over and asked anxiously what had happened. Hanzhan calmly replied that it was an infectious bug that parasitized the owner of the Breeze dance hall, and that it was now dead. Xia Yue fell into deep thought. There were only 7 parasites. 1 had already appeared. So who could the rest be? Li Linshuang calmly replied that, based on her experience writing fanfiction, the bad guys are usually close to the main character. So could it be that the members of the team around Yamin are also likely to be infected? After listening to Li Lingshuang's words, Hanzhan no longer hesitated and decided to leave this place in search of new clues. When Hanzhan walked out the door, a young man with a machete rushed at him, shouting angrily that he would kill Hanzhan. Hanzhan quickly dodged his attack and immediately kicked him, sending the man flying several meters. When the man fell, A silvery white beetle quickly crawled out of his body. Han Jiang raised his hand and quickly destroyed it. This was followed by Li Linshuang's puzzled voice. Another parasitic beetle? That's too much of a coincidence. Xia Yue looked at the fallen man and suddenly exclaimed that she had seen him before. He resembled one of Xiao Hu's subordinates. A thought suddenly flashed through Han Jiang's mind, and he muttered that everyone who was infected was connected to the virus and the Breeze dance hall. Yimin, the dance hall owner, Bai Shuang, the bug that Yifan crushed, and now this one. They were all in the dance hall, and they all had one mutual acquaintance, Xiao Hu. At that moment, he suddenly had a bad feeling. Damn it, he knew where Yifan would go next. Meanwhile, in the office on the top floor of the Xiao Hu Guard Organization headquarters, he was breathing heavily as he listened to his secretary praise him from behind his desk, calling Captain Zhao amazing. Just then, the office door was kicked in and a figure burst in. This person was none other than Yifan, who had just escaped from the hospital. Yifan angrily shouted that Xiao Hu had killed Yimin, seized the captaincy, and used the devouring worm to parasitize and suppress talented awakened beings and their contract spirits, and that he, having committed such crimes, still dares to be at large. Xiao Hu sneered and said mockingly that he must be Yimin's useless younger brother and that she had died. But instead of licking his wounds, he had come here to make a scene. Yimin, remembering the girl's death, angrily retorted that it was all his fault, and today he would settle the score with him. Xiao Hu's subordinates had already gathered outside the door, and Xiao Hu, not caring about anything, casually said that it was not his fault, but the fault of those who lacked willpower and luck, and that he was not afraid of his reinforcements, standing there and talking nonsense. Before Xiao Hu could finish speaking, his heavily armed reinforcements entered and surrounded Yifan. Xiao Hu pointed at Yifan and shouted that this man had dared to openly attempt to kill a key member of the guard organization. Xiao Hu's subordinates immediately attacked, threatening to kill Yifan and execute him on the spot. Yifan was furious. It was clear that Xiao Hu, a true villain, had struck first with false accusations, and now he was ready to fight Xiao Hu to the death. Suddenly, Han Zhan, Xiao Yue, and Li Linshuang burst through the window, and the force was so great that everyone in the room was thrown about. Xiao Hu and the others were stunned by Han Zhang's sudden appearance. Yifan asked Han Zhang in surprise how they got there, to which Han Zhang replied that if they hadn't come, would he really have preferred to be beaten up alone? Yifan looked at him silently. Then Han Zhang turned to Xiao Hu's subordinates and coldly said that this was a matter between Xiao Hu and him, and if they didn't want to die, they should get out of the way. However, they did not listen and objected, asking if Captain Han was sure he wanted to form an alliance with this murderer. Unable to reach an agreement, Xiao Hu's subordinates rushed at Han Zhan together. Han Jiang paid no attention to these small fry and knocked them all down with a single blow. Well, maybe a few, and then calmly landed on his feet. Yifan, watching his subordinates fall to the ground, couldn't help but admire Han Zhang's growing strength, thinking that his fighting skills had improved significantly in such a short time. Seeing that Xiao Hu was preparing to flee, Li Lingxuan quickly reminded Han Zhang to be careful, as Xiao Hu was trying to escape. Han Zhang instantly appeared behind Xiao Hu and shouted that he would not let him get away. Han Zhan stood firmly, gathering his strength, and delivered a powerful blow to Xiao Hu, aiming for the decisive blow, and leaving a huge hole right in the bastard's heart. After Xiao Hu fell, a corrosive worm flew out of his forehead. Upon closer inspection, Han Zhan noticed that this corrosive worm was not a queen. He immediately struck and crushed the corrosive worm as soon as it flew out. Guards from another team burst into the room and, seeing Xiao Hu's death, shouted that Han Zhan had indeed killed Captain Xiao, that he was too bold, and did he really think that the Defenders organization was the greatest power in Deep Blue City, when in fact, the greatest power was the City Lord. Han Zhan immediately realized that they had fallen into a trap. Meanwhile, half an hour earlier, the secretary brought a document to the City Lord's office for his signature. When the City Lord turned around, the secretary was horrified to see a corrosive worm preparing to penetrate the City Lord's brain. She was shocked and pointed it out to him. Soon, a terrifying scream came from the City Lord's office. Returning to the room, Han Zhan told Yifan and the others that he had a bad feeling about what was happening. He arranged for Xia Yue and the others to find his teacher, hoping that the teacher could help resolve the crisis. But Xia Yue disagreed with his plan, wanting to face the danger together with Han Zhan. In the city lord's office, he picked up a document and said to pass on the order. Han Zhan, leader of Team 0527, is suspected of murdering Deputy Captain Xiao Hu from Team 1. Issue a citywide manhunt. The city lord thought to himself that he did not expect the bait to be swallowed so quickly. It seemed that the big fish had finally taken the bait. At that moment, the main character was leaving the building, attracting a lot of attention. The man announced his decision to separate from his companions so as not to endanger them. But as soon as he steps outside, he notices something and stops. A strange old man on a hoverboard mockingly asked why an important member of the organization had not yet surrendered. The stranger orders the man to kneel in an authoritative tone, which he does. The scene switches to a traditional house in a large clearing. In it, the teacher poured himself some tea and reproachfully noted that his old friend was still hiding his true intentions. The hooded man adds that his opponent does not seem to be in a hurry, despite the seriousness of the situation. The man cynically states the facts. The successor has been caught, the evidence is clear, and the execution is expected tomorrow. The teacher puts down his cup, and with a terrifying aura, he asks if it is really necessary to bring about the death of his student. But the cultist reminds him that destroying the quantum avatar will not bring any real benefit. He sarcastically recalls that old Shang prepared such avatars for all of them. The old man feigns embarrassment and admits that he had completely forgotten about this important circumstance. He predicts with a smirk that his opponent has many more unpleasant surprises ahead of him. The cultist disappears into thin air. A loyal comrade offers his help to save his younger friend from the impending threat. But the master reveals his plan. He allowed his enemies to act for a long time in order to get to the main conspirator. The man figures out the enemy's plan, which is to use Zhao Shi as bait for Han Zhang. He makes his move, turning the very idea of using bait into a trap for the conspirator himself. The master compares life to a chess game, noting Han Zhang's hard work and efforts. The scene then shifts to the main character, who is completely bound and confined in a cell. The executioner demanded a confession to crimes that his victim did not agree to. Han Zhang defiantly replies that he has committed no crimes and has nothing to confess. But he is struck in the stomach. He is tortured in an attempt to break his will and force him to obey the demands of his captors. The executioner declares that Li Shitong will not come to his aid and offers only two possible ways out. The first option is to join a mysterious group representing the future, not the past. The second option is to remain unbroken and be executed by guillotine the next morning. Han Zhan realizes that the erosion worm was planted by Yi Ming at the instigation of the conspirators. The executioner confirms his guess, revealing that the worm is not an enemy, but a powerful tool in skilled hands. The young man pretends to agree with the arguments, pretending to have made the necessary decision. Suddenly, the man rejects both options and chooses his own, third way. His opponent shouts in rage that such a choice is tantamount to a voluntary death sentence. The next day, the TV screen showed a special news broadcast about the betrayal of the leader of Unit 0527. The assistant reported to the city lord that everything was ready for the upcoming execution. He also inquired whether the three criminals who had escaped the day before had been caught. The city lord received a report that the fugitives were hiding in one of the villas. He gave orders to continue the search immediately and apprehend them. Watching the execution, the lord wondered about the calmness of the condemned man before his death. Han Zhan pondered his teacher's strange hint to let events take their course. He was overcome with doubts as to whether everything that was happening was part of a premeditated trap. The crowd discussed the unexpected betrayal of the awakened SSS-level talent. The city lord personally appeared in the square to address the citizens of the city. His appearance caused surprise among the people gathered in the square. He spoke of the loss of a young genius accused of murdering innocent people. The city lord declared an attempt to conspire with the insect tribe against the city. The crowd unanimously demanded the immediate execution of the convicted traitor. The angry crowd continued to chant for Han Zhang's death, which pleased the bastard. Under pressure from the citizens, the city lord gave the final order for execution. The executioner accepted the order and lowered the blade of the guillotine. The main character was already in the guillotine, but suddenly someone in the crowd pressed a button, and the blade stopped just a second before beheading the main character. The unexpected malfunction of the execution machine caused confusion among those present. The city lord angrily demanded that the person responsible for disrupting the execution be brought before him immediately. Shang Ting boldly stepped forward and declared her disagreement with the execution of her benefactor. The city lord was surprised to learn of the influential Shang family's intervention in the process. Shang Ting's protest was unexpectedly joined by other dissenting voices. The main character's team. The scene shifted back to the grandfather's estate. The cultist confidently declared victory, as Han Zhan was already on the scaffold. But the old man said it was too early to draw conclusions about the outcome of the game. He suggested simply waiting and seeing how events unfolded. Agreeing with him, the cultist vanished into thin air. Old Li reported on the unsuccessful attempt to track down the real puppet master behind the conspiracy. There were tense accusations against Old Shan regarding his involvement. Old Shan angrily rejected the accusations, pointing out the absurdity of his participation in the execution. Important evidence was discovered pointing to an organization called the Crash. The involvement of the Shan family pointed to the complexity and multi-layered nature of the entire conspiracy. Kang Chuan was publicly declared a fraud, and Han Zhang was declared a true defender of the people, and the girl told them to look a little higher. Han Zhang was already on the screen, addressing the people with a fiery speech about his true destiny. The young man vowed to destroy the insectoids and protect the city from their invasion. Han Zhang's words made the crowd doubt the fairness of the accusations of treason. But then, a strange, levitating old man ordered the crowd to be quiet, trying to regain control of the situation. Suddenly, an intense pressure of incredible force appeared in the square. A representative of the Crash organization declared Han Zhang's execution to be his mission. The attacker declared that the young man's death was inevitable that day, but his blow suddenly stopped. Before that, it left behind a huge explosion. What happened caused confusion and bewilderment in the mighty old man, and then a shockwave burst out of the explosion and hit the old man. It was so powerful and hot that it instantly burned the entire front of the old bastard's body. The witnesses admitted that they could not see the person who had committed the assault. Suddenly, a girl with blue hair noticed someone. It was another old man who was running across the rooftops as usual. The executioner cursed the situation, claiming that no one could save Han Zhang today. The man realized that the teacher had begun to act, and the right moment had come. The big fist was already a couple of centimeters away from him, but the main character easily dodged the powerful point explosion. The Lord was shocked. Where did such a young warrior get such speed? He was indeed very fast. In the next second, the protagonist was already behind the Lord. He delivered a heavy blow right to his face, and with a crash he sent him crashing to the ground, creating another explosion. And when the dust cleared, the protagonist was standing right in front of the unfortunate Lord. The parasitic insect had already flown out of his head, but the main character couldn't let it get away and quickly grabbed it in midair, then quickly and forcefully squeezing it, leaving only a puddle of apple jam in its place. The unexpected appearance of the strange insect caused surprise and confusion among the characters. Han Zhan showed people a fourth-level erosion worm parasitizing a human. He explained that all his actions were aimed at protecting humanity from the threat. The appearance of the erosion worm explained the strange behavior of the city lord lately. The teacher thanked the young man for his timely intervention, which had prevented a catastrophe. He asked if the young man had felt the line between life and death during the events. Han Zhan acknowledged that the teacher's help was valuable, but he would have preferred to act on his own. The teacher praised the young man for destroying the queen insect and eliminating the threat. He expressed regret that they had been unable to preserve traces of the Dawn organization for investigation. The young man asked about the nature of the mysterious organization threatening the city's security. The teacher confirmed the existence of a secret organization that had infiltrated the ranks of the Guardians, without giving any details. Suddenly, the drunkard informed the captain of the sad discovery of Bai Shizhizhang's body among the victims of the incident. This greatly upset him. The total number of dead reached 1,001, and a sea burial was planned. And now the girl was one of those who were sent to sea. Everyone stood and watched the spectacle. It was terribly sad and melancholy. Han Zhan expressed his regret at not being able to protect Bai Shijian and apologized. Suddenly, veins and lines appeared on the girl's face, and she began to turn blue all over. The parasite was still inside her, and now she opened her eyes, completely blue. In October, the teacher inquired about her progress after the erosion worm incident. The boy confirmed that he had reached the 3rd level of power along with Lin Zhen. Li Lin Zhen reached the 3rd level with the transformation into the divine cauldron of Shen Nong. Xiao Yuwei also awakened many musical works and increased her level. The girl from the powerful clan offered to sign a contract, but the boy preferred spirits with combat attributes. Hanzan expressed his hope to obtain divine attributes for further growth. He announced his desire to become stronger and make his way through the insect apocalypse. The teacher suggested sending him to the front lines for training in the 1st military zone. He explained that contract spirits could not accompany him due to their different cultivation methods. The young man agreed with the teacher's suggestion and accepted it without objection. The scene shifted to the front line in Dacia, where fighting was raging. Tanks fired at the bastards, not allowing any delay between shots. After all, this was the only way to kill these freshwater bastards. Medics urgently evacuated the wounded from the battlefield under continuous attack. A tense dialogue ensued between the soldiers about the losses and the need for reinforcements. One soldier accused another of fleeing the battlefield after the death of 3 team members. The accused justified himself by citing the elite mission and the need to wait for reinforcements. Suddenly, his interlocutor turned around. Something very interesting had happened. A helicopter landed next to them, and out stepped the main character, carrying a backpack on his shoulder. Hanzan introduced himself as a new soldier who had arrived at the front line to serve. The question about the absence of a contract soldier caused confusion among the soldiers present. The guy's answer that the spirit had stayed at home caused shock and disbelief among the experienced fighters. Captain Zhao asked everyone to calm down and explained that this young man was not just an ordinary soldier. He drew attention to the young man's clothes, pointing out that he came from an elite city. The captain expressed skepticism about the usefulness of spoiled young craftsmen on the battlefield. A dispute broke out among the commanders over who would get the new fighter for their squad. One of the commanders reluctantly gave up his potential recruit to the other team. Captain Xiao Ya invited the newcomer to meet the rest of her squad. Xiao Ya introduced herself as the captain of the squad and announced that the young man would be joining her team. He introduced the other 2 members of the squad, Cai Shifan and Shi Zhaokan, to the new fighter. One of the soldiers complained that his clothes were completely soaked after completing the mission. Shi Zhaokan started to undress but got stuck and asked the newcomer to help her remove her stuck jacket after the combat mission. The guy modestly responded to the request for help, showing courtesy to his new colleagues. Now they were sitting by the fire. The girl thanked the main character, who said it was no big deal. The girl immediately asked about her new comrade and the absence of a contract spirit. Hanzan presented all members of the squad with valuable gifts as a gesture of welcome. The gift of 6th-level armor caused amazement and admiration among the recipients. The squad members gratefully accepted the generous gifts from their new comrade. One of the fighters refused the armor, explaining that he was a mech operator. The captain noted the recruit's wealth, guessing his noble origins from the gifts. Xiao Ya went to get his equipment, instructing the team to begin preparations. Hanzan inquired about the captain's specialization as a mech operator. He was told about Xiao Ya's ability to engage in prolonged mechanized combat thanks to his contract spirit. A colleague mentioned the captain's dislike of incompetent high-ranking officials. The captain interrupted the conversation, giving the order to immediately prepare for the mission. Hanzan inquired about the details of the squad's upcoming mission. Xiao Ya announced that they had received a blue mission to completely destroy the target. The captain began a briefing on the Izanami snake clan and their frightening rate of reproduction. Xiao Ya talked about the turning point in the war after Commander Wei Qing's return. Marshal Wei personally broke through the Serpent clan's supply lines, changing the ratio of casualties. 4 8th-level Snake Emperors distracted the commander from the main front. The 2nd military zone used the abilities of diviners to locate the snake nests. The captain emphasized the urgency of the mission and ordered an immediate advance. Fire once again took the leading position in the frame. The mecha squad approached the target, maintaining heightened vigilance in the danger zone. The fighters visually confirmed their arrival in the designated mission area. The squad was met with an unexpected sight that puzzled the soldiers. Xiaoya identified the object as snakeskin, shed after a level up. And he was absolutely right. The captain discovered hidden snake eggs inside the giant shed skin. Inside the skin, the captain measured its length and estimated the number of eggs to be in the billions. A sudden strange sound broke the silence and caught the attention of the whole squad. The eggs were slowly beginning to crack, and they were making a terrible noise that even the captain could barely stand, and soon flew away in his suit far away. Xiao screamed in shock at being launched in a 14-ton machine, but Gigi was already there and ready to help. And the suffering of the people did not stop. Everyone still covered their ears. But Mika asked the guy not to save him and to go on with the mission. But Gigi was already firmly committed to servility, and he was preparing to throw him back onto the battlefield with force. And he really did easily launch the tank into the air with his feet, and he flew, spinning like a Bakugan, until he finally landed firmly on his feet. The boy's incredible strength caused complete bewilderment among the people around him. Mecha himself did not understand how this was possible. Even lifting him was an almost impossible task. One of the squad members assumed that the man had died after falling from such a great height. The captain opened the suit and expressed his deep regret and took responsibility for the incident. But Hanjan was unexpectedly alive and asked his comrades to pull him out quickly. The team was relieved to find the guy alive and unharmed. His colleagues admitted that he had literally scared them to death earlier. The captain scolded him for taking unnecessary risks and reminded him of the mission's priority. The young man confirmed his understanding of the task and his willingness to follow the captain's instructions. The sudden appearance of a young snake from the Izanami clan posed a new threat. Numerous snakes began to awaken and become active around the perimeter. This meant only one thing. They had finally hatched and were ready to torment the lives of the workers. Now the mecha was definitely ready to show these monsters its full power. The members of the squad felt despair in the face of the enemy's overwhelming numerical superiority. The unexpected speed and agility of the snakes amazed all the observers present. The guy tried to attack the rats just as effectively. It became clear that the squad would not be able to break through the encirclement of numerous snakes. But then the main character pulled out his fist with the ring and raised it higher, beginning the activation. So strong that a protective field completely enveloped his house, and immediately the snakes stopped wanting to attack. The sudden halt in the snakes' attack puzzled the members of the squad. The strange behavior of the snakes bowing to the squad raised many questions. Those present observed an unusual display of submission on the part of the reptiles. The captain received an order to destroy the enemy immediately, despite the strange situation. And so began that very scene from Far Cry 3 under the Skrillex. It was very effective against the snakes, and this fire was visible from any part of the forest. The captain asked Han Jang about the nature of his strange influence on the snakes. The guy explained the use of special equipment to intimidate enemies. His colleagues expressed sincere admiration for the newcomer's incredible abilities, and the snakes were almost finished. The captain asked directly about the true origin and status of the mysterious fighter. Han Zhang modestly confirmed his status as a third-rank contractor without embellishment. No one in the squad believed the guy's modest assurances about his ordinariness. Suddenly, an alarm appeared on the screen. He finished talking to the protagonist and began typing something intently on the ship's computer. The captain reported on the low success rate of the mission by other squads. She acknowledged the guy's crucial role in the success of their own operation. The key points of the Snake Clan's movements, marked on the map, became known. The captain suggested using the guy's abilities to ambush them on their way. Han Zhan warned of the need for an urgent retreat in the face of a new threat. The appearance of a fifth-rank nest guard created a critical situation for the unit. Everyone was shocked. This was a snake nest guard. He was huge. The captain gave the order to retreat immediately in the face of mortal danger. The members of the detachment realized that it was impossible to defeat the powerful nest guard. Han Zhan volunteered to cover his comrades' retreat, remaining in the rear guard, and he fired a bunch of rockets right at the monsters. They quickly reached their target and blew up the snakes. Gigi was back. In shock, this fool in fur was sacrificing himself again. Now another one had grabbed his fur and was ready to bite him in a second. And she did it, but luckily Zhao flew out of the cockpit, although not quite intact, but alive. The other members of the squad were shocked to see their captain suffer such a defeat. And now the snake lunged at them, They didn't even have time to blink. But the snake failed. Some kind of protective field suddenly appeared around them and protected them from the bite. The 6th-level armor unexpectedly activated its protective function during the attack. The squad members were relieved that their protective equipment had activated in time. But the snake immediately decided to release its powerful acid venom on them. It quickly broke through the armor and poured onto the heroes inside the protection. It quickly corroded not only the armor, but also the flesh of the people inside. The protagonist was simply shocked. He did not expect such a sad outcome. Now they were left alone with the huge monster. The emergency access system was activated to counter the threat. The guy unlocked his energy and now became much more powerful. He jumped away from where the snake had struck. The use of the Rising Dragon maneuver temporarily changed the situation in favor of the squad, and he decided to fire a volley of wind attacks directly at the snake. But suddenly a horn grew on the snake's forehead and fired a powerful laser blast directly at the protagonist, piercing through his windy tornado attack and heading straight for the main character, who fell to the ground with his weapon like a meteorite. The power of the 5th-level guardian exceeded all expectations and possibilities of resistance, and the snake couldn't stop trying to eat the main character alive. He even managed to launch a completely different laser into the sky, as if another sword had been stuck into his head, which killed the crocodile in a second. The guy was simply in shock. After all, he was already preparing for his death. A girl fluttered to the scene of the battle and stood right on the head of the snake she had killed. The guy immediately got up and thanked her with all due respect. The stranger who appeared saved the guy's life, introducing herself as Gunyan Jin. The stranger called the guy handsome and introduced herself as a native of the infamous city of extreme evil. She revealed her origins from the land of exile, unrecognized by any nation. The city of extreme evil was described as a massive settlement of outcasts rejected by society. A lower district, the essence of their evil lay in their absolute freedom of action without moral restrictions. Information was revealed about an 8th-level contract spirit with the form of the Blade of Destruction. The guy was struck by the revelation of the stranger's level of power and status as a Valkyrie. The girl jumped closer to the guy. Gongyang Jin inquired about the name of the melody that enhanced her combat abilities. She announced her intention to take the musician for exclusive combat support. Han Zan resolutely stopped Gongyang Jin's attempt to take him away from the battlefield. The Valkyrie expressed contempt for the resistance of the 3rd-level contractor. The man explained that he could not leave the combat mission unfinished. Gongyang Jin threatened to use force to achieve her goal. The guy would rather die than be forcibly removed from the battlefield. Valkyrie showed unexpected flexibility and offered terms of agreement. Han Zan decided to take advantage of the situation to complete the combat mission. He offered his help in exchange for the destruction of the hatched insect swarm. Gongyang Jin agreed to the terms and provided a map of the nest's locations. 3 key points were identified for intercepting the hatched snake hatchlings. They developed a plan to coordinate with the forces of the Great Shia for a decisive offensive. A sudden flare-up of old wounds disrupted Valkyrie's plans. An ominous demonic aura began to emanate from the woman, and she turned into a terrible monster. The woman was in shock. She hadn't expected this to happen right now. Han was shocked and asked what was happening and how he could help her. But the only thing the woman said to him was to run away from there as fast as he could. And then her body darted somewhere and vanished into thin air. And so, to get rid of this demonic aura, he would have to work on the girl a little. He sprinkled the girl in black with his elixir, which quickly enveloped the girl, turning her green. And then he quickly retreated, extracting all the negative stuff from her body. And now the girl stood there clean and did not understand what was happening. Han Zan applied a healing powder to stabilize her condition. He explained the suppressive and healing properties of the remedy he had used. Then the guy asked about the wounds she had mentioned. Gongyang Jin revealed the origin of the wound from the 9th-level Insect Emperor. The man expressed shock at the terrifying power of an enemy of such a level. The offer to examine the wound was perceived as a bold attempt at intimacy. Gongyang Jin agreed to have the wound examined, but threatened to blind him for any indiscretion. Han Zan diagnosed the wound as treatable and not life-threatening. Direct contact with the wound caused extreme surprise to the observing Valkyrie, so the guy began to play a healing melody and directed all its energy to the girl's wound. He did something incredible. After his magic, There was almost no trace of the wound left. The guy explained the limitations of the cleansing powder for complete healing. He offered an alternative treatment method using his abilities. Gongyang Jin expressed surprise that the man had two contract spirits at the same time. Now the guy activated his healing abilities to the fullest, and his aura filled the clearing. And he directed his life force directly into the girl's wound. The healing process brought Valkyrie unexpected pleasure and relief. A significant improvement in the condition of the wound became noticeable after the procedure. Gongyang Jin asked to repeat the treatment because of the incredible sensations, but the guy explained the need for insect energy. He reminded her of the next task of intercepting Izanagi's hatched snake cubs, and Valkyrie suggested immediately moving on, straight to the location of the next mission. At that moment, a drone flew over the battlefield and scanned it. The command headquarters received a report of a large number of young snakes at the entrance to the gorge. The late discovery of Izanagi's snake nests created a critical situation for the defense. The insects carefully prepared their attack, forcing elite fighters to be sent to the front. An order was given to the 8th Combat Zone to temporarily refrain from active operations. Fortunately, the timely arrival of reinforcements in the form of GG and Valkyrie allowed them to take up defensive positions at a critical moment. The command was given to begin operations to contain the enemy's advance. Han Zhan volunteered to be the first to enter the battle, surprising everyone with his courage. He rushed forward onto the battlefield. Gongyang Jin noted his bravery and promised to provide cover. And now the guy was among the monsters, killing them one by one. He struck like Mike Tyson, shocking everyone at headquarters with his actions. The soldiers watched his reckless attack, predicting his imminent demise, delivering another crushing blow to the snake-like monster. The man faced a problem due to the huge number of opponents to practice his technique on. His loud cry was accompanied by a powerful attack that cleared the space around him, and he saw a couple more snakes right in front of him. Valkyrie was also watching all this, and then she decided to help the guy, striking with her laser right in the center of the battle, knocking back all the attackers. Now she drew her sword and was ready to chop everyone down. She swung and, with a shout, tried to deliver the first blow, which resembled the enormous claws of a tiger's paw. The guy refused help, saying he was still fit for action despite his injuries, and the girl was once again impressed by the fearless or reckless young man. The discovery of the third lock significantly increased his combat capabilities. The new life strike technique was successfully applied in combat conditions and destroyed several monsters at once in its path. Gongyang Jin watched the unexpected display of power with interest. She decided to join the battle, offering her help in the fight. At headquarters, the soldiers were amazed at the young man's ability to hold back an entire nest. The woman's identity was revealed as a famous demoness from the city of extreme evil. Her unexpected appearance with her younger brother raised additional questions. The scene shifted back to nature. Numerous bodies of enemies were scattered around them and provided the necessary resources for healing, and the barrel sucked up everything they had obtained or killed. Gongyang Jin confirmed her readiness for another session of treatment for her injury. After all, the wound had progressed. The healing process began with the concentration of energy on the affected area, and then bringing pleasure to the woman. The discovery of a black spike in the wound required a decision to remove it. It was decided to immediately remove the foreign object from the wound, and it was the magic bag that did it. The girl liked it very much,